Sword of Coming Chapter 1209. Chapter 1209 Dali Yuzhou Luzong Temple. At dawn, the middle-aged scribe had a fast meal, cooked a large bowl of 8 treasure porridge for himself with a small stove, and sat down at the table to read a book after eating the porridge. Floating life another day. When you open the book you will see the window light. The little novice came to knock on the window again to remind, "Mr. Chin, there is a cloud rising in the mountains, do you want to go and see?" The scribe put down the book in his hand and said with a smile, "Okay, wait a minute. I'll change my boots." Because of the heavy rain for 3 days in a row, the mountain was especially cold in spring. The middle-aged scribe was wearing a coarse cotton coat to keep warm, stepped on a pair of suede boots and held a trekking pole. I also made a kudzu cane walking stick for the little novice monk who often accompanied me to climb high and watch the clouds, using local materials. When resting on the mountain road, stop the stick like staying on tin. The temple is shrouded in clouds and mist, one big and one small, each holding a cane. Passing by the release pool near the main hall, the water is sparkling. Crucian carps gather by the bridge, the water is still the same, and the sound of knowing the king leaning on the cane. In his spare time, the young novice monk has climbed several times to look at the clouds alone. For some reason he feels tired and out of breath after halfway up the mountain, and needs to stop and rest many times. But every time I climb the mountain with this poor but clean-lived middle-aged scribe, it will be much easier, which makes the little novice puzzled. This morning we walked out of the side gate of the temple together, and they gradually climbed along the familiar mountain path. The novice just heard that the scribes will leave the temple soon, and the next time he will come to copy the scriptures. When, and he has not thought about it for the time being, so the little novice hurriedly asked this question, and if he doesn't ask again there will be no chance. The scribe smiled warmly with the green bamboo stick in his hand aggressively, and with a soft voice he gave the answer, "Physical strength is still your physical strength. It doesn't increase or decrease. I just helped you adjust your breathing and distribute your strength during the ascent. If you gain strength, your foot strength will become better. I just go into the mountains more times and practice makes perfect, so in fact this move does not involve magical powers, so you don't have to think too mysteriously." After the scribe left his residence, the ink on the rice paper on the desk was still wet. What the middle-aged scribe copied today was 2 lines of Taoism from Dashing. The sky is not created by people, but the sky is created by the sky. Those who open the sky will be born with virtue, and those who open the people will be born with thieves. Zhu commented in the narration, "What does Taoism follow from nature? The Avenger does not give up even though he has a heart, he does not complain." But for some reason the word "no" was circled by a scribe with a red pen. The capital of Yushuan Kingdom, Changning County. In an old house there is a swing in the courtyard. Everyone has a love for beauty, and the female ghost is no exception. Today Shui Rui changed into a former court dress, wearing a brocade dress with pearls on the wreath. A beautiful woman swings on a swing. This painting should be hung on a jade scroll, hanging in the blue flowers. Shui Rui was sitting on a swing, her pair of embroidered shoes was high and low. She looked at some potted plants in the courtyard that didn't need to be moved inside to hide from the rain, and for no reason she thought of Taoist Wu Dis unintentional words. A grass is a flower that doesn't bloom. Not long ago, the Taoist priest who set up a stall moved out of the haunted house. It was not easy to live in the capital, which made him pay a large amount of rent for nothing. Haunted is true, haunted house is not true. If you are used to reading novels about wit and beauty, haunted house? That's what it means to be a ghost under the pomegranate skirt. Taoist priests rented an old small house in other streets and alleys in Changning County. The flowers and plants in the courtyard were all left to the female ghost Shui Rui to take care of. It's like paying rent. The Taoist spoke with a high-sounding tone, walked the rivers and lakes in a poor way, adhered to one purpose and never lost his position on money. As a parting gift, Taoist Wu Di left a book collection seal in the house, 5-character seal script, and a warm spring fan. The material of the seal is ordinary. Taoist priests went to do part-time work on the river to help rich people dig ice to make money. I don't know where they picked up stones. The big seal is really big, the size of a palm, and square, so there are a lot of content on the side. In a whole imitation of ancient poems by Mr. Jianghu, the phrase "spring fan wiha" is excerpted from the poem. Shui Rui didn't notice the gold and stone aura of the seal, but there is a sentence in the inscription poem, "Young time is strong and fierce, and you walk alone with your sword." Did the master with ulterior motives say it himself? It made her feel a little funny. You, a private Taoist priest who spends money to buy an identity, really thinks that you are a dragon and tiger mountain celestial master who carries a mahogany sword to slay demons, and even travels far away with his sword. If she had known earlier that the scholar would give her an arty collection of books, Shui Rui might still prefer a sentence that Wu Di chanted while drinking porridge in the morning. I have Wonkius plain method, I can eat white porridge to make immortals. Shui Rui had to admit that Wu Di, a Taoist priest, had indeed read a lot of books, otherwise he would not have been able to read exegetically sentences proficiently, but she expressed doubts about whether his knowledge was high. In the twilight when the heavy rain stopped, Shui Rui was swinging alone on the swing. She was really bored. It was absolutely impossible for a Taoist priest to set up a stall in the rain in this weather before. She was a little happy and asked you to move out of the house and earn a few dollars. Money? But after being happy she was a little worried again. It was not easy for Taoist priests to go out and work hard. Shui Rui found a reason for herself and went to the Taoist priest to see if she needed some help. She still has some family background. As long as he is willing to ask, she can help if she can. After all, she is a friend. After all, Shui Rui's realm is not low, and her cultivation base in the middle 5 realms, if not for her status as a ghost, a monk at the Suiqing realm could find a place to establish a sect, and then be a guest of the monarch of the small country of Aquarius Island. She used her supernatural powers to cover her figure, and wandered all the way to the house where the Taoist priest Wu Di stayed recently. Because she was an old acquaintance with the former Judge Hong and Ji Xiaoping, the head of the Department of Yin and Yang, the Beijing City God's Temple has always treated her somewhat leniently. When she arrived at this shabby little house, she didn't show up right away and felt a little uncomfortable. She gave her such a large collection of books and seals, but lived in such a small place, which made Shui Rui feel a little guilty and she should be kept. The Taoist priest claimed that when he was young, he went to the rivers and lakes and used the pseudonym xuanhuan. At first, Shui Rui thought this statement was more interesting, and it was more fun than talking about Taoist Wu one by one. No matter how thick-skinned a Taoist priest is, how guilty should he be if he listens too much? But it turns out that Miss Shui still underestimated that Taoist Wu's face. After all, according to a fair statement, the second shopkeeper is such a number 1 person, he only needs to get on the top of the wall and lie down on the ground with his face on the ground to hold the top of the wall. She bought a stack of ghost painting charms with a Taoist before, and as a reward for this transaction, the Taoist taught 2 spells to the boy next door, and jianghu is now in the willow tendon realm. As a result, jianghu, a young man who failed in the examination, felt a lot of depression and injustice in his heart. However, according to the agreement between the 2 parties, Taoist Wu Di asked Shui Rui not to disclose the matter. It's just a fair business where Miss Shui paid a lot of money to buy talismans, and I followed the fate to teach the immortal law. Why should the seed of reading next door feel owed to me? He once settled down here for a long time, and it's just a knot in the boy's heart if he wants to pay it back, but it's not necessary. In addition, did the female ghost listen to the persuasion, and finally did not take any risks, and rashly leapfrogged to burn amulets and surrendered to the picket department in Wanshan? Especially when Shui Rui heard the great news, she was even more fortunate secretly, just because Tong Wenchang, the unattainable mountain lord on Ganzhou Mountain in Xishan, had just received the divine name bestowed by the Confucian Temple of China, the Great Banner. Shui Rui was born in Gong and she was the empress' friend back then, so she is familiar with the official rules. At this moment when the entire Diyu territory is shrouded in a festive atmosphere, is it reasonable for a female ghost to submit a complaint? Shui Rui continued to hide her body, sitting on the wall of the small house, and found an unremarkable old man squatting outside the kitchen door, looking like a farmer. She was a little surprised. Taoist Wu set up a stall for fortune-telling, and they all put it in the house? But the problem is that the attire of the old man in front of him doesn't look like a rich man. He is dressed in sackcloth and straw sandals with a bitter face. Strange, you Wu Di are so ignorant of your conscience in making money now, that you even cheat such an honest person of his hard-earned money? It can be seen that the old man is not a cheat trainer, but a poor old man. During mealtime, Taoist Wu Di seemed to be busy in the kitchen. Shui Rui hesitated for a moment, worried that she would frighten this ordinary old man, so she floated out of the small house, opened the door and entered, pretending to say, "Taoist Wu, congratulations on the housewarming." Wu Di yelled at the top of his voice in the kitchen, "It's Miss Shui, a rare visitor, sit casually in the main room, let Pindao be busy for a while." Seeing the female ghost, the old man nodded his head. Shui Rui bestowed a blessing, and the old man pinned a jasper pipe to his waist. Probably the only valuable item. Is it its idea that Taoist Wu Di played? It's really dark. Could it be that the lack of money is enough for this, and things like lianyu cigarette rods can be bought continuously? Shui Rui thought for a while, and then reminded the old man in a subtle and oblique way, "Old man, This pipe is inherited from the ancestors, right? The old man nodded. It is. Shui Rui couldn't bear it anymore and said softly, since it's from the ancestors, don't just send it out casually. If you ask Taoist Wu for a fortune-telling fortune, he'll just advance the money for you and he still owes me some small silver. The old man smiled and said nothing. The Taoist priest in the room was wearing an apron, holding a spatula, and said angrily, Miss Shui, what's the matter with you? It's a taboo in the world to cut off people's money. Besides, we are friends after all, there is no reason for you to tear things down like this. Shui Rui used her heart and said angrily, this old lady is helping the manager and not helping the relatives. Taoist Wu, you have lost money and even cheated on the ancestral property of this simple and honest old man? In this weather, you are not afraid of being struck by lightning. What? Qin Pingan took 2 large bowls and walked out of the kitchen. The steam was steaming and the fragrance was pervasive. A pair of chopsticks were placed on each of the bowls and he said with a smile, what are you trying to do? I just call my friends to come to the door, Old Tong, and try my handicrafts. Shui Rui asked, what is this? Qin Ping said with a smile, it's called rice soup, it's a specialty in my hometown, and it's a delicacy that can only be found in poor places. Qin Pingan handed the old man a bowl. The old man took the bowl and chopsticks, lowered his head and took a bite, nodded and said, not bad. This thing is quite sweet. Qin Pingan raised his head and smiled, listen, is this something that an old farmer in the village can say? Shui Rui rolled her eyes, probably she really wronged the Taoist priest, but don't be so kind as to be misunderstood by the old man. Holding the bowl, the old man took a deep breath towards the rice soup and said with a smile, Miss is so kind-hearted, how can it be in vain? Shui Rui was startled and guessed her own thoughts, or was it the mysterious mind-reading technique on the mountain? She couldn't help but glanced at the cotton-robed Taoist priest. Sitting on the steps, Qin Pingan ate rice soup like a hodgepodge and smiled vaguely. Miss Shui, didn't you ask Pindao earlier if he recognized the stern and selfless lady in Luanshan? At that time, Pindao said he did not recognize her. But I recognize Tong Shanjun, you don't believe it, I think Pindao is just joking. He'll invite Tong Shanjun here from Ganzhou Mountain, I can prove my innocence, am not bragging or drafting, and I can save Miss Shui. There are so many troublesome procedures, why bother to burn the talisman to cast an ultimatum to the Shanjun mansion? The rightful Lord Tong Shanjun of Xia Mountain is here, and Miss Shui can say whatever she has, just speak out if there is a grievance and justify it. Shui Rui was stunned for a moment and then sighed, Wu Di, you are so poor that you need to invite outsiders to perform such a fairy dance to cheat my money? Wu Di, if you are really short of money, we are not what is a good friend, but why is it so difficult to help? Why bother to resort to such indecent means? It's not worth it. Wu Di, if you want to say that you know a few friends on the mountain, and ask your grandpa to tell your grandma so that you can hire the Tiger Mansion in Ganzhou Mountain, the kind of subordinate with the smallest official hat, Shui Rui may still believe it a little bit, or that kind of dubious. Liar. That's right, it's a liar. She felt a little sad. It's only been a few days since I saw Wu Di, and Wu Di is so down and out? Qin Pingan asked, there is still a lot of rice soup in the pot, Miss Shui won't come for a bowl? Shui Rui shook her head, busy being sad. The old man put down his chopsticks very quickly and lifted the empty bowl. He'll have another bowl. Qin Pingan couldn't get up and said with a smile, Tong Shanjun will go by himself, so there is no need to see outsiders. The old man was really impolite. He got up and went to the kitchen to fill a bowl of rice soup. It seemed that he was ruthless, and the big bowl of rice soup almost overflowed the edge of the bowl. The old man hurriedly lowered his head and took a few mouthfuls. Seeing this scene, Shui Rui couldn't help but rub the center of her brows. If you really want a partner to cheat people out of money, you, Wu Di, are not willing to spend more money. For example, the old man who was in that theater troupe? Play. You two keep playing. With such clumsy acting skills, it is your ability to cheat a copper coin from my aunt. Xia Ganzhou Mountain is close to Fengxue Temple. It has 2 Chujun mountains. Among them, the main peak of Luan Mountain is several times higher than Ganzhou Mountain. The goddess of the mountain is very famous. Her name is Huailu. It is said that Tong Shanjun, who is the immediate boss, listens to her. The Shanshan mansion that manages the inner mountains and waters of Yuxuan Kingdom is Lujiao Mountain. Previously, Shui Rui wanted to go to Wenwu Temple to burn amulets and vote in Luan Mountain instead of the Tiger Mansion in Lujiao Mountain. This is also the reason. She was worried that the rich and powerful of Yuxuan Kingdom would dare to do this. Now, it will involve all the way to Lujiao Mountain, so why should it be sued? Last time, at the Xiaoqiao meeting in the royal study room of Dali capital city, the 2 mountain gods who were the crown princes of Xishan Mountain, Luan Mountain Huailu and Lujiao Mountain Changfenghan, did not attend the meeting. It is said that one is because she is too tired and lazy. Anyway, she has become the goddess of the mountain of the crown prince, and she has no chance to be promoted in the officialdom of Aquarius Island. The other is because she is too arrogant, and xuanhuan and Yuan, there are often conflicts in the mountains, and they look at each other and hate each other so that the two mountain gods have no contact. Shui Rui looked at the old man who looked more and more pitiful, and then at the Taoist priest who was setting up a stall with the old god. She thought about it, but still couldn't express what she felt, so she asked, "What's wrong with you?" Qin Ping shook his head and said with a smile, "Tong Shanjun?" Tong Wenchang hummed, "You can believe whatever she says, and you don't have to call Chang Fenghan over here to confront her. Later, I will go to Lujiao Mountain myself to see the cultural fortunes of Yushuan Kingdom in the past 100 years. The old man then added, "You can put more tofu and pig intestines next time." Qin Pingan said with a smile, "You can put a few more pieces of tofu. If you put too much pig intestines, it won't taste right. You won't have the unexpected joy of eating pig intestines." Tong Wenchang nodded, "That's the reason." Qin Pingan joked, "Old Tong, your trip to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom is a bit like a private visit in a microservice. You, the #1 Qingtian master in the Xishan area, can't let Miss Shui down. You must be determined to serve the people, please." Tong Wenchang smiled, "It's easy to say." Qin Ping joked, "Miss Shui, is this the governor of the 8 cases who holds Shangfang's sword in the opera novels, and when he arrived at the local area, he was stopped by you to sue?" Shui Rui laughed and said, "Then why is there no lus patting the road, pouring clean water on the street, and a majestic gong ringing?" Qin Ping said with a smile, "I said it was a private visit on Weibo." Tong Wenchang asked, "Miss Shui, if I remember correctly, the former civil judge here was called Hong Zhongyu?" Shui Rui nodded, "I was pushed out to Lingzhou near Luojing, the accompanying capital of the Great Li dynasty, and served as the city god of the state and was promoted." Tong Wenchang hummed, "I remember that Luanshan Huailu mentioned Hong Zhongyu twice, and always wanted to promote him to Luanshan as the head of the picket department. It seems that Hong Zhongyu made an additional request which must be brought to him. Ji Xiaoping, the Yin and Yang division of the town god's temple, who is the assistant official, can only be transferred together. It is only because there is no suitable position for Ji Xiaoping on Luan Mountain, so this matter has been dragged on. Now Hong Zhongyu has been transferred and promoted to Dali Ijo city god, and brought Ji Xiaoping with him to the post. His official career is not bad, it is indeed much better than entering Luanshan Abbot Picket Division and being hated all year round." Shui Rui was speechless. It's like an old country man sitting at the head of a village, casually commenting on the ups and downs of the officialdom of the 6 ministers and 9 ministers of a country's imperial court. But if the old man didn't make up such an inside story, how could he know about it? Shui Rui kindly reminded, "Old man, it's getting dark. It's easy for ordinary people to make rumors and arrange the inside story of the landscape and officialdom. It's easy to cause trouble. The night-wandering gods of all levels in our capital city are not vegetarians. If something happens, I will feel flustered if the ghost doesn't knock on the door. I am selfless in my heart and I am not afraid of the ghost knocking on the door." Tong Wenchang said with a smile, "Miss Shui, since Taoist Master Chen has personally intervened in this matter, you can rest assured that both Lijiashan and Yuxialover will give you a satisfactory explanation." When the old man and the Taoist had finished eating the rice soup, Shui Rui sighed. Since she was idle anyway, she took the initiative to take the 2 empty bowls and 2 pairs of chopsticks, went to the kitchen to pick up the gourd ladle and took it out of the vat. Spoon water to wash the dishes. When she shook the water stains on her hands and walked out the door, she saw the scene on the other side of the steps. Good guy, these 2 uncles actually started to smoke, smoking a stick of dry smoke after dinner, looking happy like a fairy. Tong Wenchang narrowed his eyes and said, "Can I ask, what kind of person is the boss sword immortal?" Qin Pingan suppressed a smile and said, "Talking, witty, amiable." Tong Wenchang said, "I can't believe it." Qin Pingan said, "It also depends on whether you are familiar with the boss sword immortal." Tong Wenchang nodded and asked an inappropriate question, "If you didn't call here today to deal with this family scandal, would you have to let the newly established government office of Zhao Yao, the abbot of the Ministry of Punishment, go secretly to the Xishan area?" Qin Pingan said, "I had this plan at the beginning, but I have some personal matters here, and the two should not be mixed together, so I decided to let Brother Tong go through this. Since it is to solve the problems left over from history, who will come? It's not important to solve it. Just recently Zhao Yao found a line in the capital of Dali. Brother Tong, I also need to say hello to you in advance. In a few days I will go to the next county to find my fellow villagers, but I believe the commotion will not be too big. Tong Wenchang nodded. You can do whatever you want, Mr. Tong is old and dim-witted. Besides, even if the sky is broken, the person who will clean up the mess in the end will be Dali Guosher. Qin Ping suddenly smiled and said, Do we count as mutual protection by officials? Tong Wenchang grinned. In life there is revenge and kindness for revenge. I was young too, and I was still a little bit angry when I was eating incense and clay statues. Since the words of both parties were not concealed, Shui Rui was terrified and asked cautiously, Old man, are you really Tong Shanjun? Tong Wenchang nodded. Shui Rui turned to look at Taoist Wu Di, who nodded to indicate that it was true. Shui Rui shifted her gaze again and said in a trembling voice, Tong Shanjun, so he is? Miss Shui, what's your problem? I can guess it. In this world, among the Qi practitioners on the mountain who can beat around the bush and say that they are familiar with the boss sword fairy? From the Great Wall of Sword Qi, we in Aquarius continent there are still a few people who can casually mobilize a servant of the Dali criminal department, and let Tong Wenchang come to Yuxuan Kingdom to drink a bowl of rice soup. Or is it that the girl actually has the answer in her heart, I can't believe it and I have to be alone, can outsiders believe it? Tong Wenchang picked up the cigarette stick and pointed at the fellows beside him, and said with a smile, This is Dallas' new national teacher, Luobashan Qin Pingon. Qin Ping smiled and said, I have to correct it, it's 2 big bowls of rice soup. 1 bowl and 2 bowls charge money? Of course not. Miss Shui, please help me to serve another bowl of rice soup. The rice soup cooked by the last hidden official of the Sword Qi Great Wall is not something you can eat if you want it. Shui Rui walked towards the kitchen in a daze, a mess. Tong Wenchang wondered, Why did you suddenly change your mind and let me reveal your real identity? To help Shui Rui seek justice, with Qin Ping's current status, he only needs to inform Ganzhou Shan, and there is no need for him to go to the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom himself. Qin Pingon said, It was just this time when I went out of the closed door, I suddenly wanted to understand something. Tong Wenchang said, All ears. Qin Pingon said with a smile, 3 days of fishing and 2 days of drying nets, the catch of fish is hope, the sun is hope, and fishing nets are also hope. Tong Wenchang smiled and said, It's a new way of saying it. Qin Pingon asked, Brother Tong, have you not noticed the world in the house, what's wrong? Tong Wenchang nodded, When you ask me that, I can be sure that Shui Rui is a fake. It seems that the heat is still not enough to completely deceive a mountain god. Qin Ping got up and said with a smile, Mi Gung is real. And what I heard and saw next is all real people. Tong Wenchang said, Well, wait and see. When Qin Ping went to the kitchen, Shui Rui knocked on the door and entered, still saying, Taoist Wu, congratulations on the housewarming. Like a poor knight-errant boy with a sword on his back, he watched the excitement of a grass stage theater troupe at a temple fair, and wrote down the specific shapes and structures of those minions, their respective uses, and remembered the different figures of the young, clean, ugly, and ugly. Singing and chanting, the young man thought he had to watch a few performances by the big troupe. A pair of straw sandals stepped on the imperial street, and then walked outside the imperial palace in the capital. The extremely high vermilion lacquer gate was lined with 9 nails vertically and 9 horizontally. After hesitating for a while, the boy still didn't go to the so-called Xuanhuan palace in the opera. There is a river outside the palace which is actually a good place for fishing. In the territory of Qingxing Kingdom, as the leader of the immortal mansion on the mountain of a country, the Golden K sect, recently the entire immortal mansion with ethereal celestial spirit and a pure heart for cultivating Taoism is even more festive than the Chinese New Year at the foot of the mountain. It's a lot of good things. The Battle of Xuanhuan Mountain wiped out all the evil spirits and ghosts in the separatist feudal town, and wiped out the miasma in 1,000 miles around. Then there is the female patriarch of the Golden K School. After many years she was expelled from the mountain by the genealogy of her master, and she finally regained her genealogical identity of the Lingfei Temple in the old Baishuang dynasty, and was able to recognize her ancestors and return to her clan. And together with the disciples of Qingjing Peak and Shuiqing Peak Jingxian Nunnery, the head of Qingqian and Zhang Lv Xingzi, held a meeting, and there was no suspense. Go to the genealogy. You need to know that the Taoist temple that has just been promoted to Lingfei Palace, the master of the temple Chao Rong, is the direct disciple of the head teacher of Baiyu Jinglu, which means that the Jin K sect who reduced Lingfei Palace and descended from the mountain found a mountain at once. 2 big backing mountains that are taller than one mountain. According to the rules on the mountain from now on, the Jin K sect can worship Baiyu Jing's head teacher Lu Qin as their ancestor, and Lingfei Palace Tianjun Chao Rong as their ancestor. His Majesty the Emperor of Qingxing Kingdom was in poor health, so he asked His Highness the Crown Prince and Minister of Rights to go up the mountain to congratulate him personally. The Lu family emperor has been ridiculed by the mountain all these years as the whiteboard emperor. The old emperor has taken great pains in order to let His Royal Highness, who is a concubine and not the eldest son, be able to gain a firm foothold. Now Qingxing Kingdom's ruling and opposition parties, up and down the mountain, are spreading the news that in the smoky Xuanhuan mountain boundary, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince personally commanded troops, led a team to climb the mountain and found the long-lost triple jade seal, which was lost and recovered. Among them, one emperor specially used the gold augur Nu Si Emperor seal for the Crown Prince. The 12 treasures of the Lu clan of the Qingxing Kingdom are finally complete again. The common people say that this is the destiny of the destiny, and that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, who is both talented and talented, will be the God-ordained master in the future. A young man with a sword on his back in the Xianxia Inn in the capital, sent a letter with his flying sword to the Zhang family in Tianqiao County. Soon my hometown Zhuangqiong wrote back a letter in person, asking Mr. Chen to wait for a while, and they will rush to the capital of Qingxing Kingdom immediately. On the same day, Zhang Qiong brought Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yanghua into the inn quickly, and deliberately brought Zhang Yujiao, who is known as a young sword fairy. In the end, Zhang Yujiao saw the young man Qin Ren, wearing straw sandals. The two sides had already met each other at Pomo Peak on the border of Xuanhuan Mountain. This person is Qin Zhenxian, who carved letters on the top of the city? Zhang Yujiao was a little dizzy and even more ashamed. On the way down the Pomo Peak, he didn't know the heights of the sky and the earth, and even chatted with his companion Jin Lu about the young hermit official. How could the young sword immortal be able to imagine that he was following the righteous master on the mountain road a few steps behind him? Chen Pingan explained with a smile, "This trip is just a stroll, so I changed my identity and appearance." Zhang Kaiqin suddenly realized that it was no wonder that the previous battle of Xuanhuan Mountain, which was full of thunder and rain, was full of indescribable mystery from the beginning to the end. Chen Pingan asked straight to the point, "Patriarch Zhang, Miss Kaiqin, in your opinion, what kind of person is Lu Yu, Prince of Qingxing Kingdom?" Zhang Kaiqin hesitated, and the atmosphere in the room became extremely dignified for a while. Hong Yanghua had no choice but to help warm the field and said, "Prince Lu Yu not only has literary talents, but also wants to do something practical for Qingxing Kingdom." Qin Ping smiled and said, "Is this really the case?" Hong Yanghua choked for a moment, not knowing how to answer. After all, it was he and the young lady who asked the young hermit to come out to attend Lu Ye's coronation ceremony. Qin Shanzhu came to Qingxing country in Xuanhuan Mountain ahead of time, saying that he was just hanging out. Who would believe it? If the Crown Prince Lu Yu has a bad impression in Qin Shanz's heart, then today is Qin Shanzhu and the entire Tianqiao County Zhang family's Xingshi. It's a big idiot, isn't it? The family Zhang Qiong has a temperament of talking one and one and said with a bold smile, "It may be a bit harsh to say that Lu Yu is ambitious and talented. I have seen this child a few times and he has a good heart. Anyway, I can't boast about how to understand people's sentiments and know people's hearts well. Compared with Emperor Lu Ha, I am much worse. As for Lu Ye's shortcomings, I can't say anything, but I can guarantee one thing. For an ordinary noble son of a royal family in a small country, even if he is placed in the surrounding countries, it is considered very good." Qin Pingan asked with a smile, "Patriarch Zhang means that Lu Yu belongs to a piece of rough jade, or is it worth carving?" Zhang Qiong nodded, "Master Qin Shan, that's pretty much what I meant." Don't look at the old patriarch's smooth speech and fluent answers, but he was actually very panicked. Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yanghua looked at each other, and they both sensed each other's embarrassment. Hong Yanghua was even more nervous. For some reason besides his appearance, the boy in front of him seemed to have changed his temperament. Qin Pingan was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "I have wandered around a few places in the capital. If I had known this earlier, I would never have agreed to go down the mountain to attend the ceremony last time." Zhang Kaiqin looked embarrassed and tentatively asked, "Then cancel the ceremony?" Qin Ping rubbed the center of his brows and said helplessly, "Do you think it's appropriate to do this?" Probably because newborn calves are not afraid of tigers, but Zhang Yujiao dared to ask, "Qin Shanzhu, can you tell me why you don't like Lu Yu so much?" Qin Pingan said, "The upper beams of the entire eastern palace are not straight and the lower beams are crooked. Except for a man named Ren Xiangqi, Zhan Shifu Qing Jilang, who has a little knowledge of economics and general affairs, the rest of the 7 eastern palace officials I met, the Yamen, there are different departments and different official ranks, all of them are people who seek fame and reputation, from Xiao Zhanshi and Tong Shi Sharon of Zhan Shifu, to Zhuo Shuzi of Zuochunfang, Sizilang of Yuchunfang, And Prince Shima of Sieging Bureau. Jingzi, I have seen it with my own eyes. Zhang Yujiao was extremely shocked and was very surprised. It turned out that Xuanhuan was really a hanging out. Among them, the extremely high-ranking 6th Fu of the Eastern Palace is more of a false title. It is just an honorary title bestowed by the court on some veterans. In fact, it has nothing to do with the daily teaching assistants of the Eastern Palace. The expensive Zhan Shifu, together with Zhou Chunfang and Yu Chunfang and the Sieging Bureau, totaled 4 East Palace Yamen. In order to facilitate the transfer of documents between each other, they were sent to Zhan Shifu to work together. Zhan Shifu was not in the palace. Inside, it was built on the bank of the Yulong River between the imperial city and the outer city, because Qingxing Kingdom's capital occupies a small area, and the Yamen is not considered alienated from His Majesty the Emperor. Among them there are 2 chief officials in the Bureau of Economics and Economics, Prince Shima, who are not high in rank and are only from the 5th rank. They are mainly responsible for the publication, editing and collection of books in the Eastern Palace. Job, the old saying in the market says that the Prime Minister's concierge is a 3rd-rank official, let alone the Crown Prince's official in the East Palace, the old man in the hidden residence. Moreover, these noble officials can use this as a ladder for the transfer of Hanlin officials. Qin Pingan added, and most of the officials here think that Prince Luyu is a fool who is easy to deceive. The implication is that Luyu was regarded as a fool by this group of officials of his own East Palace, and you, the Zhang family of Tianqiao County who helped Qingxing Kingdom and Luoba Mountain to be a matchmaker, were even more fools, and I, Qin Pingan, as the owner of Luoba Mountain, invisibly became the biggest fool. Qin Pingan said, I don't mind adding icing on the cake to anyone, but because of my appearance some things are wrong and I even lose the possibility of correcting mistakes. Zhang Yujiao seems to understand but not understand. Zhang Qiong asked curiously, Mr. Qin, what should we do now? Qin Ping said with a smile, it's not my habit to give up halfway. Since they are all borrowed guests, let's work together with the Zhang family of Tianqiao County to help clean the courtyard. Zhang Qiong expressed his gratitude with a sigh of relief, it's a great honor. Recently, the temples of Qingxing Kingdom have indeed been quite lively. First, Zhou Shuzi, as the chief official of Zhou Chunfang in Zhan Shifu, submitted a memorial, suggesting that the court prohibit outsiders from filling certain noble positions. The Ministry of Officials did not have objections to this, and even the Yu Shuzi, who was a senior official in the Zhan Shifu, publicly sang against it, insisting that the quality of an official's character has nothing to do with his birth. Then, the Minister of the Ministry of Industry requested that the Ministry of Industry, which has heavy government affairs, be promoted to the 6 forward government offices. For this reason, he did not hesitate to quarrel with the officials of the Ministry of War in the court hall. And the coronation ceremony of His Highness the Crown Prince became the next top priority for the officials of the Qingxing Kingdom's ritual department. For those few 2nd and 3rd rank bosses from various ministries who have left the stage, you come and I go back and forth. As long as our Ministry of Etiquette successfully organizes this celebration, it will be a great achievement. The Emperor Lu of Qingxing Kingdom is indeed old, and has to think about how the Crown Prince can successfully inherit the Datong. In order to make this ceremony look more important, many dignitaries left Beijing one after another. Explicit or implied, no expense was spared in inviting people to the ceremony. The farce of Qingxing Kingdom making an exception this time and inviting monks from other countries to watch the ceremony soon stopped, just because it was said that there would be a big man whose identity was still shrouded in clouds and fog to visit Qingxing Kingdom. The more it spread, the more exaggerated it became. At first, it was a certain respected Yuanying old fairy, then it was a certain real emperor from the ancestral hall of Shengazong, and then it was an old man from the ancestral hall of a certain Jiang family in Yunlin. In the end it became even more exaggerated. It is rumored that there are noses and eyes, and it is said that the one who was invited by Mrs. Liu was none other than Li Bo Chaoyong, one of the 2 dukes of Dadu in Aquarius Continent. You Qingxing country, why don't you just say that you hired Qin Pingan from Luoba Mountain? Before Qin Ping called Zhang's party from Tianqiao County. The golden house where one of the princes washes horses hides his beauty. The night was heavy and the rain hit the plantains. The official was young and in his prime, and when he was fighting he got off his horse out of breath, wanting nothing more, stretched out his hand to rub the white ball of Mei Jianyang who was lying beside him, thinking about his thoughts. The woman sat up, stretched out her hand to roll up her messy black hair, and asked with a smile, everyone in the capital said that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince will soon ascend the throne and become emperor, sir. Can you be promoted soon? My master is a minister who has been an official in the hidden mansion for many years, and when his royal highness puts on the dragon robe and sits on the dragon chair, hey, is there any better thing in the world than this that one person can ascend to heaven alone? Maybe not. She just didn't know if she had the luck in this life to be able to see His Majesty's face up close. The official glanced sideways at the white-flowered scenery, probably because he didn't like her radiance when she mentioned Prince Luyu, so he sneered, "Don't think that His Highness is so great, it's just a piece of clothing. Man, woman or woman." She smiled prettily, dazzled the man for a while. He sighed. He had already fought 2 battles tonight and he was powerless. When he sat up, the woman lay on the bed familiarly, with her jade body lying horizontally. She stretched out her hand to pick up the messy clothes on the ground, and with a snap, she was hit and trembling. She gave him a wink and helped him put on his clothes. The man twitched the corners of his mouth, knowing that she would not chew his tongue when she was out of the house. Whoever throws something big and empty to him at the square, he thinks it is a good strategy for governing the country. After getting along with His Highness the Crown Prince for a long time, you will find that it is just like that. Except for a good pregnancy, it cannot be said that there is no ability. It is just false, and there are a lot of sages and sages in the book, but what is the use? It is nothing more than gold and jade. Just talking about why the right concubine and the left concubine are contradicting each other, isn't it because of their different backgrounds, and behind them are a large group of scholars who are not well known for the time being? It doesn't matter whether you are a prince, grandson, literary scholar, or an idle scholar with no way out. Liu, do you really know what true talent and real learning are? A few poems of homage and a few games of chessboard players, can you know how much talent and learning the opponent has, and can determine whether the opponent has a good way to govern the country? Half a bucket of water. I like to pretend to know what I don't know. Just like him, who was the prince's horse-washing horse, he just studied how many chess books and seals in private, and practiced how many words on the stack of postcards, only to write the hairpin that His Highness the Prince loves the most. Washaokai. On the other side of the wall, there was a silent boy with a sword on his back. Before dawn, a car was driving to participate in the morning court. The Lord's Washuzi in the carriage lowered his head and breathed heavily. It rained heavily. This section of the road was extremely muddy and bumpy, and it would not become smooth until we reached the Royal Street. The carriage passed by a row of stalls that were open early and late at night, and there were all kinds of food, all of which were waiting for the court officials. The vendors chatted with each other occasionally, and they would sigh that it was not easy to be an official. The coachman stopped the carriage deftly, and threw a handful of copper coins onto the table, maybe because he didn't grasp the strength well, or maybe it was on purpose. The few copper coins just rolled to the ground. It was a regular customer, and the vendor hurriedly trotted a few steps, bowed his head, and passed a food box to the driver according to the old rules. Mess with a breakfast. The vendor rubbed his hands, waited until the carriage passed, then bent down to pick up a few copper coins in the mud, and then gently rubbed his fingertips on his apron. These officials who are qualified to go to the early court are more particular than each other, and they are very clean. Another carriage was parked nearby, and the vendors all practiced sharp eyes, and at a glance, they knew that it was the carriage of the Minister of the Ministry of Industry. Mr. Minister is having a headache about the reserves of a country's arsenal, how to clear up the mountains of weapons in several warehouses of the Ministry of War. The undercurrents in the court and the open and secret fights between the government offices have nothing to do with the common people. Anyway, it is a good world of singing and dancing, and there is no need to fight. Whenever I put away the breakfast stall and find that there are a few more silver coins than yesterday, today is a good day. If there is a few pennies less, I will try to earn more tomorrow. A boy in straw sandals spent more than a dozen won and was not full. In the past few days I have been buying breakfast here, chewing slowly. There is only one official named Ren Xianxia who seems to get out of the carriage every day, and sits here to have breakfast, absent-minded, often muttering and habitually counting with his fingers as if he is settling accounts. As soon as the young man inquired about it, he realized that he was quite famous, and that he was born in a serious imperial examination biography, and that Ren Xianxia was actually from a family of a prefect in a certain place. Bien was sent to Zhan Shifu and sat on the bench for many years. Many of the exams that were not as good as his in the same year have made a fortune. The vendors here are very well informed. The handle is Ren Xianqi's same year, the lower-ranked second-class Jinshi, the Han family in white clothes, but now he is riding on the head. The boy in straw sandals asked curiously, how did Qing Jilong participate in the early court since he was not a big official? The vendors laughed endlessly and asked, did you not see Qing Jilong's carriage and the direction was wrong? In the Zhanshi mansion by the Yulong River, a few officials on duty at night were yawning profusely. joking about the recent anecdotes in Xuanhuan or the Bureau of Economics and Economics, in order to refresh themselves and drive away sleepiness. Yu Chunfeng, a few officials, teapots filled with wine, each tacitly took a sip, boasting that the country is a national policy. What is lacking is not talent, but an official status. In the relatively most leisurely department of economics and economics, they are chatting about which rouge horse a certain lord of a certain yamen has surrendered recently, which meritorious descendant fought with which prince's son, and who bought a big house son, which rare books and whose authentic calligraphy and paintings have been bought. It seems that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of Qingxing Kingdom has raised a large group of rich and idle people who are concerned about the country and the people. Just waiting for you Lu Yu to ascend the throne, you can show your ambitions? The boy in straw sandals with a talisman on his forehead just walked through the corridors and aisles of the various government offices, swaggering as if entering a land of no one, occasionally blowing the talisman lightly, ups and downs. In the palace, the old Emperor Lu Ha temporarily summoned more than a dozen important officials of the temple, His Royal Highness Lu Yu and Qing Qian, the current leader of the Jianghu sect, the protector of the country, to participate in the discussion tonight. After all, such a big man who is far away in the sky and higher than the sky, can't help but be careless when he visits his country. All the details need to be carefully considered, and there must be no mistakes. What kind of fairy wine to drink, how to choose seasonal fruits and vegetables and special pastries, the shape of the chair table, the selection of antiques and calligraphy and painting books in the house, where to put them, etc., are all knowledge. The Ministry of Etiquette has just discussed a preliminary plan. After Chen Shanzhu arrived in Qingxing country, the address where he will stay, there are 3 records for the time being at the Yamen of the Ministry of Rites. The Xianxia Inn in the Songtao Pavilion and the Chueqing Peak in the Jianghu School have their own advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of choosing the Honglu Temple Hall is that the imperial court can fully control all links. Chen Shanzhu mistakenly thought that Qing Xinghua was not caring enough, and was perfunctory. The location of Songtao Pavilion is good, and it is in the capital city. However, the imperial court needs to temporarily build a fairy palace. The Ministry of Industry has already prepared enough materials on the mountain. It is almost like copying a fairy palace. But this requires bargaining with the Songtao Pavilion. The Ministry of Households allocated a large amount of fairy money for this purpose, and only waited for His Majesty the Emperor to issue an imperial construction. If it is said that the location of the Jianghu faction, the Orich Fairy Mansion, the surrounding martial law and many other matters can be omitted, the only problem is that it is too far away from the capital, and His Majesty the Emperor obviously hopes to take advantage of this once-in-lifetime opportunity to let the Prince Lu Yu has had a lot of contact with Chen Shanzhu, who was born in the lineage of literary sages. If the two people's personalities and words are congenial for the Lu family Guizhua, it will be 100 years and 1,000 years of peace of mind. Therefore, deep down in His Majesty's heart, His Majesty still prefers to choose the Songtao Pavilion as the place where Master Qin Shan will stay. The Secretary of the Ministry of Punishment said softly, "Your Majesty, the Wuqing Bingma Division just got the news that Zhang Qiong and his party rushed to the Songtao Pavilion tonight. According to the rules, our priests did not track down who they were going to see." Lu Ha said with a smile, "According to the intelligence, I heard that the behind-the-scenes bosses of the inns on the Songtao Pavilion are all surnamed Dong? After all, Boss Dong and Shanzhu Qin are still from the same village." Qing Qian nodded and said, "Dong Shuijing, nicknamed Dong Banzhou, and Qin Shanzhu are both natives of Huaihuang County, Longzhou." Lu Ha sighed, "A Lizhu cave is really a hidden dragon and a crouching tiger. The younger generation is even more outstanding." Among the 10 young people from Aquarius Island selected that year, in addition to Ma Kuxuan, who was the top of the list, there was also Xia Ling from the Longquan sword sect. It seems that the female sword immortal named Sui Yuyu is also a genealogy monk of Luapa Mountain. There are still different opinions about Sui Yuyu's background, and there is no conclusion. In fact, all the Qi practitioners on Beipingza Mountain knew it well. If it wasn't for some reasons, plus the young hermit official who had already been ranked among the top 10 young people in the world, and the current suzerain of Longquan sword sect, Lu Xianyang, there is also Guqin who ascended to the sky in one step and became the direct disciple of Zheng Juzhong in Baidi City. There are 10 young people in Aquarius Island. If we only talk about their hometown and background, regardless of the current Taoist place, then the younger generation of monks in Lizhu Dongtian can completely occupy half of the country. The protector of the country, who looked like a child, smiled and said, "I have to admit that the luck of this place in Longzhou is at its peak, and it is the most magnificent in the world." An old minister of the Ministry of War asked curiously, Song Mu, king of Dali Luo, Zhu, king of Donghai Si, Lord Qinshan, and Guqin, they all lived in the same alley back then? Can you meet each other often? Cheng Qian nodded and said, that alley is called Nipping Alley. It seems that the ancestral home of Chao Shi, the sword fairy of Nan Pasuajo, is also in this alley, but the old sword fairy Chao has been away from home for a long time. Old Xianxia held back for a long time before he could make a concise two-word evaluation. Terrible. If it were him, assuming that he was a prophet and knew about the future achievements of these people 20 or 30 years ago when the Liju cave just opened, when his body was still strong, he would go to the so-called mud bottle alley. Can't you have a trembling heart and a wobble with your feet? Can you imagine that a young man who is an apprentice and a kiln worker is the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sorchi in the future? How do you greet each other when you meet in an alley? A young girl who may return with a bucket of water from the Iron Lock Well is the only true dragon in the world. She will face the two throne monsters alone in the battle of the old dragon city. In the end, the Confucian temple decided that she would be in charge of the East China Sea. Since it is said that distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors, they just don't know that Guqin, who is known as the Madman, and Song Mu, the most powerful vassal king of the Great Li dynasty, what was their relationship in the early years, whether they were harmonious or not. Probably due to the approaching of the Qingming festival, there was continuous heavy rain, but the recent atmosphere of the Zhuji school's Tsayu Mountain, and the state of mind of the genealogy monks, were like the sun shining brightly. It was only because Tsayu Mountain, which already belonged to Xinjiang Mountain, only spent 30 grand Uruguayan pesos coins to buy it back after the leader Guo Huifeng took a trip to Yixin Peak alone. As for how Guo Huifeng talked with the sword fairy suzerain Xuanhuan, she didn't say exactly how they talked. The monks of the Zhuji sect only found out through some gossip from the peaks of Xinjiang Mountain that it was the Xuanhuan who personally appeared at the foot of the Zushan Mountain to receive him. At the same time, the relationship between the Zhuji faction and Xinjiang Mountain remains the same, and it will not become the latter's downfall, but the annual tribute share remains the same, or the relationship of spending money to buy asylum. Bai I, who is the mining officer of Tsayu Mountain today, just entered the mountain, and saw a familiar face squatting at the entrance of an old pit. The old man walked quickly near the entrance of the old pothole, slowed down a little and joked with the young man, "You are a dog, so well informed? That's good, save a lot of trouble finding someone. Now that the Zhuji faction has overcome the difficulties, it's okay to say that it's a blessing in disguise, so the outsider GG, who was kicked out by himself not long ago to avoid the limelight, can come back and resume his duties. It's just why the Zhu Zongzhu is willing to treat the Zhuji faction so favorably and take the initiative to show her goodwill. The last time Guo Huifeng was at the foot of the Yixin Peak, he didn't understand it. After returning to the Zhuji faction to hold a meeting in the Patriarch Hall, she just said the final result of the discussion between the two parties. Let Zhang Lv Lingxia restrain his monk's words in the near future. Don't get carried away, lest some young and energetic sword immortals in Xinjiang Mountain hear it, feel unhappy in their hearts and come to find fault again. With his hands in his sleeves, Chenji asked with a puzzled face, "Uncle Bai, what news?" Seeing that he didn't seem to be pretending to be stupid, Uncle Bai hesitated for a moment, but told the other party a general idea from his heart. It was nothing more than an improvement in the relationship with Xinjiang Mountain. The head of Gua and the master of the bamboo clarified all the misunderstandings, and won the victory for the Zhuji faction. He had lived in peace with Xinjiang Mountain for hundreds of years, so he planned to let Qinjiu restore his status as an outsider, and asked Qinjiu if he would like it. The young man shouted angrily, "It was Uncle Bai who drove me away, and now it is Uncle Bai who invited me back to Tsayu Mountain. How dare you, Uncle Bai, walk the fish here?" Uncle Bai smiled and said, "Don't act like a good boy when you get a cheap price. You can just say it. Would you like to resume your status as a knowledgeable guest? If you nod, don't be too happy. There is also a hard job waiting for you, but don't let your energy go in vain. Can raise salary." The old man's eyes were kind, looking at this young man whose boots were covered with mud from the mountains. It must be that it is really not easy to make a living outside, otherwise this kid would not have returned to Tsayu Mountain holding his nose, putting himself in his shoes and putting himself in his youth, being chased away. "I really don't want to serve you anymore. As an outsider, the salary is 12 snowflakes per month as usual, and the bamboo stick pie includes food and housing, and there is almost no additional expenses. What's more, Zhika is responsible for dealing with people if he is a little more active, and if he gets some kickbacks as long as he doesn't get too dark with by boss kindness and the old man's love and partiality for the old man, he will definitely turn a blind eye to it. One eye, not to mention a lot of oil and water. Let the young people save some daughter-in-law money with Zizipai, after all, it is possible." But if you say that your old heart is higher than the sky and you fell in love with a certain fairy from the Daxian mansion such as Sujia and Jingyang Mountain, then you will be fine, sleep more and dream more. Chen Ping said with a smile, Uncle Bai, I came back to Tsayu Mountain this time to enjoy the blessings. Let me talk about it first. What is the hard work? I have to hear it before making a decision. Don't fall into a trap. Uncle Bai smiled and said, the Kaiushan mining project that was put on hold has now resumed work, but both the head of Gua and Zhang Zhanglu feel that the previous method is not very reliable. The ideas raised here, I have brought a few words to the Patriarch Hall. I never thought that most of the members of the Patriarch Hall thought it was good, so I asked for an errand for you to manage the accounts. How about it? The personal promise of a suzerain sword fairy is more reliable than any vows made by burning talismans and submitting ultimatums. This means that for at least 300 to 500 years or even longer, the Bamboo Emperor will remain the suzerain of Xinjiang Mountain for as long as one day. Then the Zhuji school, which was once precarious, no longer has any internal and external troubles. Just like the last meeting in the Patriarch's Hall, Bai and I, who used to only listen and not talk, rarely took the initiative to ask if he could accept Yenka Qinjiu as his direct disciple. It was obvious that he wanted to cultivate the other party well, and he was going to give the mining officer a hereditary replacement to the young man surnamed Qin. The leader Guo Huifeng also had a good impression of the young people who often went fishing by the river, and the leader Ling Xie took a special look at the old files and found that this outsider had a good reputation in his own school, so she didn't have to in this kind of trivial matter. He competed with the head of the sect, so Qinjiu became a direct disciple of the Patriarch Hall, which was almost a certainty. As for Bai and I himself, after having this idea, his mood became more and more relaxed. He always felt that in the future he would raise a flock of geese and ducks, build a vegetable garden, fish by the river, and read books if he looked at thousands of mountains. Young people can't be heartless, but they can't be too tall and they shouldn't be too sharp. They have to let the world and human affairs help them sharpen their edges and corners. So the old man didn't tell Qinjiu his true thoughts. One day when I retire, let Qinjiu stand on top, and there is a chair in the Zhuji Patriarch Hall. First become your own heirloom status, and after a few years of qualifications, take advantage of the opportunity to serve as the next mining officer. The old man is paving the way for the young. Uncle Bai, to be honest, it's really not that good. Qin Pingan rubbed his cheeks. Will it be overkill? Bai and I laughed angrily and slapped the young man on the shoulder. Well, Qinjika has a high level of ambition and he is so overqualified. Qin Pingan said, Uncle Bai, I understand your kindness, but I came here just to say goodbye to you. Last time I was worried that Uncle Bai would think too much, so I left in a hurry on purpose. Bai and I asked suspiciously, the stinky boy found a place to stay so quickly? Don't it be that Xinjiang Mountain? Why, just drank a bit of wine, and climbed to the high branch of Xiaohu Sword Immortal of Shuilong Peak. Qin Ping couldn't help laughing and said, even if I dare to go, Xinjiang Mountain won't accept me. Bai and I thought for a while and didn't pretend to be a veteran. He must be young, so he just said, then I won't ask any more questions. You young people have your own ideas. It's good to venture outside. Anyway, outside if you are successful, I am happy for you. If you are doing well, don't be pretentious. Go back to Kaiushan and Uncle Bai will always have a bowl of food for you. The Bamboo Branch School is not a big school, but the style of the school is good after all. Yes, there are not so many intrigues and dirty things. Qin Pingan smiled and narrowed his eyes, stretched out his sleeves with both hands, clasped his fists and shook it a few times and said, Boy, thank Uncle Bai here. Bai and I smiled and said, it's a pity that the head of Guo once praised you a few times in the discussion of the Patriarch Hall. The young man rubbed his hands in surprise and said, could it be? Bai and I scolded with a smile, Guo's head is a golden core immortal, can he look up to you? How dare you kid have a bad stomach and want to eat soft food all day long? Qin Ping smiled and said, Uncle Bai, to be honest, I already have a daughter-in-law. I have a very good relationship with her in a place that can be regarded as my second hometown. She has a good family background, a good temper, and a good cultivation qualification, but at home I have the final say. When I am away from home, my face is so good, no one dares to say that I eat soft food, drink casually outside, and come back when I want to go home. There is a bowl of hangover soup waiting for me. The old man smiled and said, stop bragging about this kind of bullshit. A man can be so hard-headed and he would never put it on his mouth. I see you, kid, you are out drinking with friends and you come home late and you are often locked out of the door. Qin Pingan was shocked and said, Uncle Bai can do it, come here? The old man smiled and said, have you never eaten pork or seen a pig run? Qin Ping gave the old man a thumbs up. It's a coincidence that your surname is also Qin. If you want to learn how to eat soft rice, you can learn from that person. Xuanhuan from Luapa Mountain can become a Taoist couple with Ning Yao, and the soft rice is the best in the world. Yes, Qin Pingan is really not a thing. Mr. Yi is still a bachelor, useless. At this moment, the old man noticed that the young man's body was tense. He turned his head stiffly, and then had a smiling face. It's hard to say whether the smile is bright or flattering. Following the old line of sight, Bian Ai saw a heroic squint-eyed woman with a slender figure and a sword case on her back. She just stared at the young man. Ning Yao smiled and saluted the old man. My name is Ning Yao, and I am the one who was given soft food. Bian Ai was stunned for a moment, clasped her fists in return and said with a smile, Young lady is joking. Qin Ping jumped up, walked quickly towards Ning Yao and asked in his heart, Why are you here? Unexpectedly, he didn't notice the slightest sign. When Ning Yao came, Qin Pingan was kept in the dark and he gasped after realizing it. The matter of the head of Gua. Uncle Bai misunderstood me? Ning Yao said in a heartfelt voice. Boss Sword Immortal once reminded me to retreat in the future before the sky weeps. I must hide from the rain and wait until the rain breaks before going out. I have nothing to do. Come and have a look. Qin Ping grinned. Am already in the immortal realm, the great sword immortal. Putting it on the great wall of sword chi, a sword cultivator in the immortal realm is called a great sword immortal, but it is not a curse word. Ning Yao nodded and said, I see. Qin Pingan asked tentatively, When did you get here? Ning Yao twitched the corner of his mouth and said, Don't worry after you talk about the head of Gua and could it be. Qin Ping laughed and said, Uncle Bai is an old bachelor. He has the same virtue as the Jianghu Great Wall wine shop. He likes to chat nonsense and find something to talk about. In fact, we don't usually chat like this. Ning Yao smiled and said, The conversation at the wine table is farting, I know it very well. Just the wine and the table. Qin Pingan looked complicated for a moment and asked, Could it be you? On the way of practice, there is almost no serious retreat for Ning Yao. She has the weight of serious retreat. Qin Pingan has personally experienced it in the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Ning Yao looked playful. 2 realms higher than you. 14 realms. Sword of Coming Chapter 12:10. Chapter 12:10. The whole world seems to be waiting for a young eagle to grow up. Finally, Ning Yao grew into a pure sword cultivator in the 14th realm. It was once placed with the greatest high hopes and expectations, but it never surprised and disappointed. As a pure swordsman, Ning Yao entered the 14th realm, just like the way of martial arts, xianxia entered the 11th realm. It is a certain necessity that belongs to them alone. Xianxia has already reached the first level of supernatural power. If Qin Pingan doesn't hurry up, once Xianxia ascends to the martial god realm again. Qin Ping can completely imagine that the next time he asks Xianxia about punches and slaps in the face, he will have to pay off the debt. The boundary of Xiyu Mountain used to be a place where military strategists fought against each other in ancient times. The river is still the same with ebb and flow. Qin Pingan asked with a smile, Why did you come to me first? Ning Yao said, I have already arrived in xianxia. I first quietly went to the Luapa Mountain bamboo building, and then went to the school to watch for a while. When I heard the voice from here, I hurried over. Ning Yao is not conceited to the point of being defiant. In this heavy rain called Heaven Weeping by the Boss Sword Fairy, she can enter the 14th realm by taking shelter from the rain. In the other 4 worlds, there must be other masters who have been planning for a long time, just waiting to use the rain to break through. This guy Qin Pingan has made a lot of enemies, and he has gathered too many cool and hidden sites, so the first thing for Ning Yao to become a pure sword cultivator in the 14th realm is to worry that there are big monks who will enter the ranks earlier than her, or at the same time. In the 14th realm, taking advantage of the disordered weather, Qin Pingan was sneakily attacked. So she greeted Zhong to Confucian Temple. To be precise, she was the one who temporarily made up a customs clearance certificate. Therefore, Ning Yao's trip to Grand Virtue World is not just a matter of missing. Qin Pingan is obsessed with being a teacher. In the past near the Jianghu Great Wall wine shop, he taught the children in Lingxi Lane and Yanmei Lane how to read, and also served as a storyteller, telling a lot of strange stories. In this matter, the Boss Sword Immortal is still very pleased. The Great Wall of Sword Chi didn't exclude writing and learning, it just didn't like xianxia at first. Qin Ping introduced with a smile, Uncle Bai, this is my daughter-in-law Ning Yao who has the same name and surname as Ning Yao. Uncle Bai nodded and said, No wonder Qinjiu is so pure-hearted and ascetic here in Xiyu Mountain. He is busy with other things and fishing every day. It turns out that he already has someone in his heart. Qin Ping felt relieved. Ning Yao said with a smile. I am very relieved of him about the love between men and women. Because Ning Yao showed up at the Luoba Mountain asking sword and Jingyang Mountain ceremony before, so this time she showed up, she played a trick. Uncle Bai smiled understandingly. You guys talk, just stroll around Sayu Mountain, I still need to go to a few old pits to watch mining matters. At the same time, the old man said in a heartfelt voice, Don't worry about leaving, boy, remember to take Miss Ning to my restaurant for a meal and just charge me. Just take it as a way to save this kid's face, her man can still mess around outside. To be honest, don't say that the woman carrying the sword box in front of me is called Ning Yao, even if Qinzhou's name is Qin Pingan, I'm afraid the old man will only sigh, such a coincidence. Could it be that this pair of men and women, Qin Pingan is really Qin Pingan, and Ning Yao is really Ning Yao? No matter how much Bai Yanai has a sense of belonging to the Zhuji sect, he doesn't feel that such a small sect of his own can stop this pair of men and women who are a match made in heaven. Especially Qinzhou has been an outsider for so long. The old man looked back at the scenery by the river. Countless apricot blossoms were knocked to the ground by the rain, as if paving a flower path. Qin Pingan looked at the back of the old man and said with a smile, Uncle Bai, it's settled, wait for me to set the wine later, send you an invitation and sit at the main table. Bai Yanai turned her head and said with a smile, It's easy to say. If you think about it boldly, at most you will be drinking at the same table with 2 or 3 immortals. Could it be that your hands still shake when you toast? Bai Yanai held back her laughter and asked in her heart, There won't be that legendary old fairy in Jade Realm, right? Qin Ping said with a smile, Jade Pujing can't sit at the main table. The host table of the wedding banquet between myself and Ning Yao is either Mr. Huolong Daoist, Su Yuanxia Qin Shi or the current Qin Ji. It seems that there really is no Jade Realm. Bai Yanai nodded. The old man understood how this kid tricked Miss Nanning into his hands. Ning Yao knew that Qin Pingan's elder relationship was always very good. Qin Pingan once gave an answer that was not an answer. These elders with different personalities just like their young selves. Qin Ping led Ning Yao to the river, and Ning Yao asked curiously, How did you break through 2 realms one after another? She didn't use her heart. Before Qin Pingan could speak, Ning Yao explained, Since I'm here, I don't need to hide my words. I can detect anyone who dares to spy on this place under the 14th realm. Whoever wants to be questioned by her can just watch the mountains and rivers. It's a pity that Lu's family of Yin and Yang in Zhongtu has a long memory, otherwise she would have a reason to go to Shenzhou of Zhongtu. Qin Pingan sighed, nodded and said, This is the 14th realm. Maybe just call Ning Yao directly and she will know it instantly. Qin Pingan explained, This retreat is more risky. Doing the opposite is equivalent to doing the bottleneck of the Jade Realm in the nascent Soul Realm, leaving no room for yourself, facing all the dark sides of yourself, asking yourself, knocking at the heart, putting aside good and evil, just seeking the truth. Coupled with this heavy rain, I got some unexpected gifts from the Great Tao, which are related to the book box left by Grandpa Chui on the mountain, and also related to the bookcase I put in the fairy grave twice. Copper coins and gold and fine copper coins are somewhat related, but these are relatively obvious clues. To be precise, they are related to all my past and landscape footprints. It can be regarded as a kind of echo. I have put a lot of thought into it and am not going to brag. These whimsical ideas are very ingenious and interlocking. Would you like to listen to them? On Luoluo Mountain, the guest Yu Laozhen heard it and he felt quite uncomfortable. Vulgar. Ning Yao nodded and said, Tell me more specifically, I'm not in a hurry. Qin Ping laughed for no reason just because he remembered something Jing Dafeng said, Anyway, if it is raining, it is idle, either playing shoes on a rainy day or having a baby on a rainy day, he. After hearing Qin Pingan's detailed description of the retreat, Ning Yao nodded and said, The sword is slanted and it is dangerous. That child he chose to leave voluntarily in the end, maybe it was not because he recognized or accepted himself when he grew up. It's just that he is kind-hearted and doesn't want to make things difficult for you. Of course, this is just my personal opinion and it may not be the truth, and you don't have to bear any burden on it. Qin Pingan was speechless for a long time. Regarding this matter, he actually had a question and answer session with his pure and divine self, and no one had a definite answer. Bystanders clear. Maybe what Ning Yao said is the truth. Ning Yao said, Anyway, since you are already a great sword immortal, the next path is suddenly clear and clear. Right, Qin Great Sword Immortal. To a certain extent, it is a big pass from the Jade Raw realm to the immortal realm, and questioning the heart and seeking the truth pays more attention to it, but from the immortal realm to the ascension realm, it is mostly cultivation. It is nothing more than completing a rudimentary Tao heart on an existing road, removing the chaff and saving the chaff, tempering the soul, and cultivating the Tao, starting to rearrange the small world of the human body, choosing the right aura to cultivate intensively, just like sitting on a mountain. On the premise of the blessed place, another cave is built, and finally the cave is connected with the blessed place, that is, ascension. Each Qi mansion is a separate blessed land, born with good aptitude for cultivating Taoism. God will reward you with food. If there are more rice bowls, the number of blessed lands will be larger, and the sky will be bigger in the future. In the daytime, riding a dragon, lifting a cloud, riding a crane, and ascending from a house, there are more than 60 types of ascension in history. So before Ning Yao came, her real worry, the biggest worry, was how Qin Pingan would return to the Jade Realm, and how to make further progress in the Jade Realm, return to the original and become an immortal. There have been no stupid people who can climb mountains since ancient times, so how a person who is smart enough to face even smarter demons is a big problem. The Tao is 1 foot tall and the devil is 1 foot tall. This is not an understatement of Taoist generalizations. As for Yupu to immortal, it is said that some monks on the top of the mountain regarded it as a rehearsal of the ascension to the 14th realm. Although Ning Yao did not understand the meaning of it, since the top of the mountain said so, there must be difficulties in it. As a result, Qin, it's good to be safe, breaking through 2 realms in one go, which made Ning Yao relieved. She raised her eyebrows. Her eyesight is not bad. Chen Ping ignored Ning Yao's jokes on purpose and said solemnly, "When I go back to Feishing City, I must thank the child King Yuan's Xuanhuan. Back then, the little girl ranked me 11th among the sword immortals at the top of the city. Foresight. Next time we meet, I will definitely teach her a few good fists." Ning Yao said, "Over the colorful world, a lot of middle 5-level Qi practitioners have emerged recently, and I believe there will be a group of hidden Jade-level people soon. If she, as the number 1 person in the world in name, does not enter the 14th realm, and once again distances herself from all the monks in the colorful world, then the situation in the world that has gradually taken shape is very likely to usher in an earth-shaking change overnight." Variety. Qin Pingan said, "An old saying goes that the sky knows that it will be hungry, so it is called the rain millet. Since the rain millet must be the first to cross, if you hide your secrets now, it will really be the end of Xuanhuan, the blessed land of lotus flowers and the armed sage. I just don't know, there will be a few more new 14th realms in the wilderness. Once upon a time, the great ancestor of Tuiyue Mountain. Careful. The great demon who created the Hall of Valor in the wild world has just risen. Xie Yun's master, Lu Fine, who was eaten by Zhoumi White Pond. Now Wu Mingshi, Bai Jing and Xiao Mo, the group of ancient monks who have been sleeping for a long time, are all at the peak of the Ascension realm who are expected to cross a big step. At the price of impurity, Xiao Yun, the former hermit official who entered the 14th realm early. Of course, the sword cultivator who replaced the great ancestor Tuiyue as the co-lord of the wilderness was also added. And that Xuanhuan with pure sword heart. The dispersal of the patriarchs of the 3 teachings, coupled with the advancement of Haoran Xianxia in the wild world, is not possible, but will definitely speed up the summit of a small group of wild monks. Ning Yao asked, "When will Yu Shengui end?" Qin Pingan said, "It will be in a few days, and I will choose to visit the door on Qingming festival." Ning Yao asked, "Do you need me to protect the formation?" Qin Ping shook his head and smiled, "No need, at most it's Ma Kuxuan and Yu Shiwu who repented, and the 2 jades, even if they put all their efforts, they can't make any waves." Ning Yao laughed and said, "It's just 2 jades? After becoming a great sword immortal, the tone is different." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "After all, our sword cultivators in the immortal realm of the Great Wall of Sword Qi can be regarded as Qi practitioners in the Ascension realm of the Grand Virtue world." Ning Yao asked, "What should I say now?" Qin Pingan said, "There are still a few small matters to be dealt with, and then we can withdraw soon. The school is busy with farming, and it is time to pick Mingqian tea. I will give the Mongolian children a few days off, and the real body will leave early. Take a trip to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom." Ning Yao said, "Then I'll go to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and I'll come back as soon as I go." Qin Ping said with a smile, "Don't worry that my side will be inexplicably hit by a spell from a monk in the 14th realm." Ning Yao said, "What if it's Wuzhou?" Qin Pingan said, "It's nothing more than unreasonable and unreasonable reciprocation. Let's see who loses more. After all, he still has a mind that travels far away and Wuzhou dares to pick it up." Apart from being held accountable by the Confucian Temple, Qin Pingan doesn't mind showing up in Qingming Tianxia in advance with a certain pure posture. Ning Yao nodded, "Be careful." Qin Pingan suddenly said, "Although there are no yin and yang gods, I have already built a preliminary framework for a statue, imitating Mr. Chi's posture in the Battle of the Old Dragon City. Furthermore, Lu Xianying once taught me a complete ancestral sword scripture at the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Back then, the threshold for this sword technique was too high for me. It was difficult for me to learn it, and it was impossible to learn it. Now I can have it. Give it a try. In the previous confrontation with the heart demon, it has been practiced hundreds of thousands of times. It is hard to say how effective it is, but the first object to sacrifice the sword may be a Tibetan. In the remnants of the wilderness in Tonggishao, the female swordsman's alias is Dogao, and she is more lingering. There are more truths, some ideas, I have detained them and I have forgotten them for the time being. I can tell you in detail after I withdraw the formation. Ning Yao hummed. Without dragging his feet, Ning Yao quietly traveled across the sea. But she didn't go straight to the Great Wall of Sword Chi but Luzhou and Beiju. She walked to the heavily guarded Qingliang sect, and cut down with a sword, almost cutting off Xiaoliang's entire wrist. Fighting back, standing where she was, she stretched out her hand and rubbed her wrist. The half of the red line intentionally left by Ning Yao had been chopped into powder by Ning Yao's sword. Ning Yao didn't even bother to say a word and left Beiju Luzhou directly, went to Donghai Juanfu, met the woman named Jigue. Wang Zhu noticed Ning Yao's current state, and his face was obviously not very good looking. The first time the two sides met in Nipping Lane, it was the tip of a needle facing the wheat-ons. Each of them was not pleasing to the eye, so this reunion after many years, there is still nothing to talk about. Ning Yao just reminded her to pay attention. Wang Zhu Yanran smiled and said a few harsh and soft words hidden in the cotton are like gratification. There seems to be no one in the history of the youngest 14-level monk. Miss Ning's luck and aptitude are as good. Ning Yao twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "It's still the same." Passing by the new Yulongzong during the period, Ning Yao hesitated for a moment, but stopped here to meet the new suzerain Nayland Saihuan. Nayland Saihuan didn't expect that Ning Yao had reached the 14th realm, and even mistakenly thought she was in the Ascension realm. After all, it was only a few years ago and Ning Yao had already broken through 3 realms in a row. Leaving Yulongzong and arriving at the site of the Sword Chi Great Wall, Ning Yao stood alone on half of the wall, with her back facing the unfamiliar north and looking at the familiar south. Pei Min hid so well that Ning Yao couldn't find him. So Ning Yao was hesitating whether to take another detour to find the great demon Yangji who is now in Tonggishao. I heard that she is now by the side of the Empress Dequan who has a good face. I just thought about it but I held back. Ning Yao believed that Qin Pingan could do better, just like asking swords in Jinyang Mountain before. If it were her, there would be no way for the sword fairies in Jinyang Mountain to suffer. And will be unhappy for a long time, and be disgusted by Luoluo Mountain. Ning Yao floated down from the top of the wall and looked up at the big characters on the top of the wall. The latest engraving is Qin Pingan's engraving of the word Ping on the top of the city. Life is like duckweed, gathering and parting in a hurry. Nowadays there are many Qi practitioners from other places who come here to travel, stop in those big characters and stroke such as corridors and caves, drink and chat. Back then Ning Yao would often sit there with his friends. Returning to the Great Wall of Sword Chi this time, Ning Yao has selfish intentions, and wants to help Qin Pingan as a lobbyist. As for whether Qi Tingji would feel resentful and blame her for poaching, Ning Yao didn't care. Qi Tingji, the old sword fairy who also carved letters on the top of the city, after all, has only reached the Ascension realm. For the time being, only Xing Yun, who was born in Yanmei Lane, and Lu Shui, whose family is in Taishiang Street, have chosen Qingping sword sect among the local sword cultivators who have hidden their identities for many years in the wilderness and returned to their hometown after traveling far away. The others, like Gao Shuang, Guodu and Huang Ling, who have set up 5-level sword cultivators, seem to be more inclined to the Dragon Elephant sword sect that Qi Tingji chose as the site of Nan Pasuajo. Choice is easy to understand. The woman Jianxiu Jusu was born in Xuanhu Street and was once an enshrinement of the Qi family. Her choice is also reasonable. In the past, Xuan, who belonged to Yingwen's lineage of swordsmen and served as Xiao Yun's right-hand man, was her clan. Both Huangling and Xianyang have a sword fairy's private residence, which seems to be named Jinggangpo and Baiheoan respectively. During the years when Gao Shuang and Mei Can lived in seclusion in the wild world, they found a Taoist couple and disciples, both of whom were wild sword cultivators. The direct disciple is a sword cultivator in the immortal realm. Of course, Ning Yao has never seen any of these sword cultivators from his hometown, from the wild. The interval between years and months is too long, and there is too much difference in generation. When they left their hometown, they took the initiative to become dead soldiers in the wild world. Except for Huangling and Shenyang, who were special, they had already become famous in the Jianqi Great Wall in their early years. Most of the rest were Earth immortals, not even Jindan and Yuanying. The files at the Summer Palace never recorded these things, and they were still worried that the list would be leaked and Tua Yueshan would follow along. Facts have proved that this move is both wise and overwhelmed, because Xiao Yun brought 2 Yupujing sword cultivators from the lineage of the hermit official back then, Luoshan and Zhuan, to betray the Great Wall of Sword Qi. In the end, they didn't help the wild world find any nails. It can be seen from this that Xiao Yu really hated xianxia, and then hated the entire Great Wall of Sword Qi. She felt too aggrieved, so she chose to go to the wild. But Xiao Sun didn't hold any resentment towards the sword cultivators in his hometown who seemed to be waiting for death and dying in vain all their lives. Ning Yao walked casually on the battlefield of the past, came to a place, squatted down and picked up some dirt. On the top of the city wall and at the 2 places on the city wall, whoever was the first to recognize the identity of the woman carrying the sword box, news spread, and there was a commotion all of a sudden. The number 1 person in the world recognized by the Tao is very important, and the Qi practitioners on the mountain know it well. Therefore, none of the Qi practitioners dared to go up and exchange a few words with that woman. On the other side of the city, there is a group of Qi practitioners from Aquarius continent, and Yu Rongyan Ning Yao is the Taoist partner of Qin Jianxian in this continent. The rest of the 8 continents you eat farts. Ning Yao quickly found the sword cultivator's aura at Zumadu and greeted him. Sensing the movements on the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Qi Tingji and Wei Jin rushed over to Yu Jin soon, and there were also some unfamiliar faces, all of whom were sword repairmen without exception. Ning Yao turned around and clasped fists with the sword repairman to salute. Qi Tingji had the highest realm and the best eyesight. Suppressing the ripples in his heart, he just asked Ning Yao with his eyes. Ning Yao nodded slightly. Qi Tingji didn't hide his wry smile. If it wasn't for taboo, he really wanted to ask this Ning girl who seemed to break through 4 realms in the blink of an eye, which way is the way to get together. Wei Jin, the great sword immortal of Fengshua Temple, said guiltily, "It was because of the help of the elder sword immortal that I got a few gifts of sword intent from senior Zhongyuan." Ning Yao said, "If it wasn't for Wei Jiangxian's own knowledge of swordsmanship enough, Boss Jianxian wouldn't be able to help." Wei Jin smiled. The wine shop's horizontal criticism is not a scam. After all, Wei Jianxian is the biggest customer of that wine shop. As the wild sword cultivator, the woman Ling Sun and the young sword immortal named Jinza are obviously very curious about this genius sword cultivator who was the only one in the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the past. Ling Sun took the lead in introducing himself. "My name is Ling Sun, and I am Guidu's Taoist companion." The immortal realm swordsman smiled and said, "I follow my master's surname, my Taoist name is Jinza, and now I am under the pseudonym Mei Dandang." Meiken reached out and rubbed the young man's head and said with a smile, "My disciple, who entered the fairyland at the age of more than 200, has good aptitude." Xianyang cut to the chase and said, "We all received the flying sword messages from Xing Yun and Lu Shui, so we made an appointment to meet Sect Master Qi. Xianyang and Lu Shu's masters are old friends. It's just that Xianyang is not very willing to go to Tongya Island or Luapa Mountain." Huang Ling asked in his heart, "Ning Yao, I heard from Qi Tingji that Chen Pingan fell to the nascent soul realm after returning to the realm?" Ning Yao nodded. Huang Ling smiled and said, "Then I won't go to Qingping Sword Sect. That Chui Sect master doesn't seem to be a sword cultivator." Meiken smiled and said, "Firstly, Qin Pingan was a hermit official, and then there are rumors that Tongyi's atmosphere is not good. After all, my apprentice is from the monster clan, so we master and apprentice will not make trouble for the hermit. This is obviously no reason to find a reason." "Follow you," Ning Yao said brightly, "but Chen Pingan is now a sword fairy." The implication of her words is that apart from Qi Tingji, together with Wei and Jin, it is only about catching each other and fighting each other. You are not enough to see Chen Pingan. The matter of being a lobbyist seems to be on hold. Ning Yao doesn't force it, and the melon that is twisted is not sweet. Zhu Su suddenly said with a smile, "Even Mi Hu's younger brother is in the fairyland now? There is a chance to visit Qingping Jianzong over there." In her memory, only Mi Hu was the ugly young man, but she didn't have any impression of Mi Yu. But Zhu Su was in the wilderness and heard a lot of rumors about the Mi brothers. It seems that this sword cultivator has made up his mind to stay in the Dragon Elephant Sword Sect. Gao Shuang, Zhu Su, Jin Zi, Guidu and Taoist couple Ling Sun, Huang Ling, Xianyang, Meiken and disciple Mei Dandang. All of them are sword cultivators of the upper 5 realms, whether they are worshippers or guest ministers. There are 9 of them here alone at this moment. If you add Lu Ji, who is bound to ascend to the Ascension realm, Xiao Jingyan, a swordsman in the Yupu realm, Mrs. Yen Yen in the Yupu realm, and Qi Tingji's Dragon Elephant Sword Sect, Are there several well-deserved number one sword sects in the world? In today's vast world, apart from Taofu Mountain where Fulu Yuxuan is located, and Jing Zhezhong's Baidi City, how many other sects can compete with them? Qi Tingji was willing to stay in Haoran Xianxia and start a sect, but he was waiting for today? Even Ning Yao couldn't help asking, are there any other sword cultivators joining the Dragon Elephant Sword sect? Qi Tingji smiled and nodded, there are probably 3 or 4 more. In this way the sect that really inherits the Jinshi Great Wall family is actually not Qin Pingan, who was the last hermit official, but Qi Tingji's Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Wei Jin joked, it seems that the old sword fairy Qi is still more effective than the sign of the young hermit official. He is a guest official of Luoba Mountain, so he must not bend his elbows. Qi Tingji nodded and said, in a sect there are more monks in the upper 5 realms than in the lower and middle 5 realms. Our Dragon Elephant Sword sect is the only one. Therefore the old sword fairy Qi who has obsessive-compulsive disorder has already made up his mind. To raise the threshold for accepting apprentices in the sect to a higher level, he must select the best from the best. You can do your best to teach them swordsmanship, but they will not be named for the time being. Whether every young sword cultivator can be included in the clan genealogy requires his nod in person. Assuming that the Dragon Elephant Sword sect has 20 monks of the upper 5 realms one day, there will be only 19 registered disciples other than the Sword Immortal, on the Golden Jade genealogy. Qi Tingji is planning to take a trip to Tongye continent recently, and personally invite the Sword Immortal Su Jun from Jinjia continent to join the Dragon Elephant Sword sect as the head of the sect. Fortunately it was Ning Yao who came here, not Qin Pingan. Otherwise, Qi Tingji would not dare to say such big words, and xuanhuan would not be as easy-talking as Ning Yao. Ning Yao said, the strong are stronger. I hope that the Dragon Elephant Sword sect can make persistent efforts and strive for the number 1 sect background in Haoran Tianxia. She would definitely be partial to Qin Pingan and Luopashan, but if the Dragon Elephant Sword sect can flourish, she also thinks it is a good thing and is happy to see it succeed. Qi Tingji asked with a smile, Ning Yao, can you say it? Ning Yao asked doubtfully, what did you say? Qi Tingji said helplessly, your realm. Ning Yao smiled and said, there is nothing to say about this. Only then did Qi Tingji reveal the secret to everyone with his heartfelt voice. Ning Yao is already a pure sword cultivator at the 14th level. This handsome white-robed old sword fairy is our great wall of sword Qi, and finally there is another person who has reached the top of the sword. Even though Qi Tingji was the most selfish person among sword immortals, even Qin Qing was unwilling to let him go to Wuxia Tianxia, but chose to entrust Feishing City to Qin Shi, but Qi Tingji was still Qi Tingji after all. Qi Tingji smiled and said, shall we go to the top of the city to have a look? In the past, the people discussing matters at the head of the city were all sword immortals. For thousands of years, the only exception was that the boss sword immortal handpicked Qin Pingan to take over the mess of the Yingguan lineage. Ning Yao nodded. Together they ride the wind to the top of the city. On the top of the city, lined up one by one, 11 sword cultivators of the 5th realm, either standing, squatting or sitting. Some sword cultivators who have returned home but have no hometown to speak of, are sad that the swing with fluttering dresses is gone at the top of the city, some are sad that they have lost the private houses of the sword immortals who often visit to drink, and some are sad in Yanmei Lane and some are sad. People are sad that they can't see the thatched hut of the boss sword fairy. Ning Yao asked softly, didn't the old deaf boy be invited to join the Dragon Elephant Sword sect? Qi Tingji shook his head and said, it's hard to get back to freedom, how could the old deaf boy fall into the trap of himself? And the old deaf boy hid well, probably no one will find him until the war is over. Zhu Su joked with a smile, Ning Yao, I was a lobbyist for your men, but one of them didn't get any money, and they had to return without success. Don't you have any awkwardness in your heart? Ning Yao said, there's nothing to be awkward about. Wei Jin said, Ning Yao, help me with a message. Qin Pingan wants to move the Wanyan pine tree in Shangxiantai so he can just move away. Just say that I agreed, and as compensation, let Luopa Mountain take care of the disciples of Fengshui Temple more in the future. Ning Yao asked suspiciously, are you going to find a chance to ask Xuanhuan for a sword? Wei Jin's silence was the answer. Ning Yao said, I'm going to visit the 100,000 mountains. Qi Tingji said, I have a chance to go to Dragon Elephant Sword sect to meet Lu Ji. Ning Yao said, I will not persuade her to go to Qingming Tianxia. Qi Tingji smiled and said, no need to persuade you. As long as Ning Yao shows up at the Dragon Elephant Sword sect now, it will be more effective than any persuasion words. Ning Yao nodded, and her figure disappeared out of thin air at the top of the city. When Ning Yao left the city, Several sword cultivators let out a long breath at the same time. After all, their age and Taoist age were there. When Ning Yao was here, they must not show timidity. But I have to admit that being in such close contact with a 14th level pure sword cultivator is quite stressful. What's more, Ning Yao is still the #1 person in a new world. As one of the only two outsiders, Mei Dandang asked a big question. Ning Yao and Fei Ran, are they the most promising monks who are at the same level as the founders of the 3 religions? If Qi Tingji didn't speak, no one would dare to answer this question. After a long silence, Ling Sun said with a smile, I'm curious as to what kind of person xuanhuan is, so Ning Yao can like him. Qi Tingji said with a smile, he is a very stubborn and smart person. Even if we don't agree with each other and are destined not to be friends, we should try our best not to provoke him. Xianyang was surprised and said, such a high evaluation? Qi Tingji put it in a more vivid way, it's fine to think of him as Zheng Juzhong, who is still young for the time being. Some people shook their heads, obviously not believing it. Ning Yao came to the familiar mountain of Xuanhuan Dashan. He saw a sable-hat girl with flushed cheeks sitting on the edge of the cliff in a daze. It was rare for the old blind man to take the initiative to walk out of the hut, and said with a smile, Ning girl is here, yo, not bad, we have to call each other fellow Taoists from now on. Ning Yao smiled and said, Grandpa Jitsi. The old blind man nodded and said, when the wine is set, remember to reserve a seat for me, I have to sit at the main table. Ning Yao said, I don't know, I can't rush him for this kind of thing. The old blind man nodded and said, it's outrageous. The sable-hat girl with ears pricked up turned her head and said flatteringly, wow, you are Ning Yao, our wife of the mountain master? Ning Yao asked in his heart, you are Bai Jing? Have you seen the 5 supremes in the old heaven? Xiego rubbed the sable hat, smiled and said, except for that one I haven't seen it once, the other 4 have seen it from afar, but they dare not approach, the sword holder, the armored person, the water god, who else is here? Hey, look at my memory. Ning Yao smiled. The old blind man laughed and said, look, it's not without reason that she can't sleep with a strange fellow Taoist. Ning Yao nodded, no wonder. Xiego curled his lips, I'm busy choosing the way to join the Tao now, and I don't care about it like you. On the other side of Tsayu Mountain, after Ning Yao left, Qin Pingan went down the old pit and went to say goodbye to Uncle Bai. On the road, I met 2 familiar young quarrymen who were taking a break from their busy schedule, carrying a water bottle and chewing on dry food. When they saw this outsider, they all called him by his name. The younger generation living here in Tsayu Mountain likes to talk to Qinjiu. They have a good stomach, a good temper, can drink and can tell a lot of anecdotes and stories. It is very interesting to be able to speak as if there are endless local proverbs. Qin Ping asked the 2 teenagers what they were talking about, and one of them smiled and said that we were talking about the down-and-out mountain master Qin Shan. Another boy said that our Taiyu mountain is actually not bad, and that we are only short of Luapa mountain by Qin Jianxian who knows how to make money. Qin Ping nodded and smiled, you know Qin Jianxian. Changjiu, you have so much experience in the world, have you met Qin Pingan? It's full of calculations, I've seen it twice. Once in Fushui Island in Luzhou, Beiju, and once in my mind world. A young man clasped the back of his head with both hands. I don't know what I can talk to Qin Pingan if I really want to see him. Qin Ping stretched out his hand, and another skinny young man tore off half a piece of prunes cake and handed it to Qinjiu. Qin Ping squatted aside, chewed slowly and said with a smile, think about it, you can remember it now. The skinny and dark boy complained, Changji, you are an intellectual after all, why don't you eat and drink with us all the time? Qin Pingan said with a smile, Master Zhike eats your cakes to save face. You are not stingy when you give cakes every time. So this superfluous complaint is superfluous, so take it back quickly. The boy rolled his eyes. After all, if you really want to talk about eating and drinking, they are still going too far. There is always a few pickled fish that can't be kept at the old side, so they just let them take advantage of it. The young man who was really thinking about that question over there came back to his senses and asked, Changji, didn't you resign the outsider? Why did you come back again? Qin Pingan laughed and said, young people learn calligraphy and swords and already have the eyes to see the clouds. People are in the Yinghua and they look at the world. Recently they can walk horses. They are not weaker than the ancient heroes. The sword can be defeated by one person. The book is full of names, and the long term the wind blows into the short sleeves, the inner hands are like ice, Kong Shan is alone, and last night there was a ringing in the box, my 2nd and 3rd sons and I have had a deep friendship throughout our lives. The boy sighed and came again. The stale and sour words are really not as interesting as his dirty words. Qin Ping smiled and said, shall I explain it to you? The skinny boy slapped his head and took out another piece of cake. That's enough, all right, I know half a piece of cake can't stop your mouth. Chen Pingan laughed loudly, and he was no longer polite to the young man who spent a lot of money. A young girl Ping Ping walked by gracefully with a slender waist and light footsteps, and the boys immediately raised their voices to speak. On Tongyi's Hao, the capital city of Yunyan Kingdom, Jiang Shangzhen took Su Jiaoqia, whose alias was Luo Wan, to find Wenyu, the deputy head of Tianmu Academy. When Wenyu read the secret letter from Chen Pingan, instead of hesitating he helped Luo Wan to make suggestions and finalize the details, specifically how to pretend to be the suzerain Han Yushu of the Wanyao sect, so that it would be more real. At Yilindu outside the capital, Lu Yuzhou, Lu Suiyu, and Yu Yufu went out to a small restaurant together, and had an argument with a group of unruly mountain chi practitioners. The former went for the special food, while the latter was those who specially go to small restaurants to experience the sufferings of the people, saw that Lu Yuzhou was like an embroidered pillow, and he was able to bring two beautiful beauties to this kind of restaurant to drink, and he was very angry. In order to use family background to oppress people and use fairy money to smash people, he couldn't scold Lu Yuzhou who was always smiling, so he asked Lu Yuzhou if they knew who his father was. Lu Suiyu was very happy on the spot, saying that if you don't know who your father is, you can ask your mother. On the side of Qingxing country, Chen Pingan, together with the Zhang family of Tianchao Commandery, took the initiative to find the old Emperor Lu Ha and Qing Qian, the protector of the country, and cooked wine around the stove. The two sides had a long talk all night. They were either imprisoned or directly expelled from the country. After that, as long as it was the loss of the post, how the imperial court should be held accountable, who should be held accountable, and how big or small the case should be, all depended on the outcome of the incident. Hearing this, Qin Pingan said with a smile, Wu Yuan, I know what you mean, I still know about this matter, it must have been deliberately done by Brother Cui from the beginning to the end, so you want to ask me, those who suffered joint and several liability, the officials lost their official hats and were wronged. Should the Dali court wrong them? Wu Yuan was sitting on the first floor of the bamboo building at that time, facing a brazier, stretching out her hands to warm herself, and sitting opposite the new national teacher. Wu Yuan nodded, emphasizing her tone, and asked us as insiders, whether we should intentionally wrong them. Tong Wenchang, the of Huashan Mountain, ate a few more bowls of rice soup at Chen Pinggan's side, and then went directly to Lujiao Mountain, one of the two crown princes. Before summoning the mountain Chang Fenghan, Tong Wenchang went there by himself in a warehouse in Lujiao Mountain. I dug out all the files related to the circulation of Yushuan Kingdom's civil and military fortunes in the past century, shook off the dust from those books, sat behind the desk and smoked while flipping through the files. A group of subordinate officials from the archives department of the Shanshan mansion stood tremblingly in the corridor outside the house, accompanied by the two chief officials of the department of Wen and Wu Yun who did not dare to breathe. Lord Xinjun, who has set foot on Lujiao Mountain, why is this so? Chang Fenghan put on his official uniform. This high-ranking mountain god, who can be said to be under one person and above 10,000 people in the Xishan area of Aquarius Island, came outside the house expressionlessly. Fenghan made a bow towards the room, but didn't speak, let alone walked into the room. Tong Wenchang didn't raise his head, except for the sound of pages being turned. There was only the sound of the old tiger smashing his mouth, and the room was full of smoke, lingering and lingering. Chang Fenghan stood silently at the door for nearly a stick of incense, and then glanced at the chief officials, who were about to leave the corridor quietly. Tong Wenchang finally said, Changshan God thinks that the family's ugliness cannot be publicized? Chang Fenghan hesitated to speak. As soon as Tong Xinjun said this, the figures of the officials in the corridor became as motionless as nails. Tong Wenchang closed a booklet, shook the dust from the new booklet, looked up at Chang Fenghan at the door and asked, Do you know the female ghost Shui Rui? Chang Fenghan shook his head honestly and said, Return to the god, I have never heard of this ghost. Tong Wenchang asked, Do you know Hong Zhongyu? Chang Fenghan nodded and said, I know, the former civil judge of the city god's temple in the capital of the Yushuan Kingdom, has just been promoted to Lingzhou, which is near the capital of Dali City, as the city god lord. Before Hong Zhongyu took office, he sent a letter to the lower officials to remind me pay attention to Yu Zuangguo's literary movement and imperial examination rankings in the past 2 years. Not long ago, I asked Gao Zongxuan, the Secretary of Cultural Affairs, to check the files, and Gao Zongxuan gave me an answer that was correct. Tong Wenchang said, Gao Zongxuan. A female official of the Shanshan mansion suddenly had a big head, bit her lip, walked to the door and fell down on the ground. Lujiashan Culture and Transport Director Gao Zongxuan, I have an audience with the god. Kneeling at the door, Gao Kongsen's face was pale and colorless. The answer she gave to her master of the mountain earlier was actually, there is no major flaw. It's just that she dared to expose such words in person. Tong Wenchang said, I promised Qin Guosher that Xia will give him a satisfactory answer. Chang Fenghan Gao Zhongshuan, tell me, how should I give him? Earlier in that small house I drank a little wine with Chen Pinggan, and the side dish was the wild onion fried sauce. The two have known each other for a long time, but they know each other well, so they talk freely. Young people say that the world is good and beautiful. The old man said that there are countless mountains and rivers so big in the world. It was raining heavily, the world was dark, and there was a wine shop on the side of the road that was still open. One rode leisurely, holding a golden whip and a wine pot in one hand. They came here to drink in the rain, and the horseshoes burst and splashed mud. Tomorrow is Qingming festival. But it's nothing to the drunk nobleman on horseback. Anyway, Ma Shi is not busy on this day. The hometown is far away, so there is no need to go to the grave to worship the ancestors. Drenched by the heavy rain, Ma Yinshan got off his horse, hiccuped, and yelled outside the door, Sister Song, I need to drink your wine to sober up, and then help me dry my clothes. Humming, Ma Yinshan felt a little strange. The restaurant was open, but the mountain goddess of Zhur Mountain didn't even make a few words of teasing. Ma Yinshan hesitated for a moment, with a calm expression, hiccuped, turned around directly and wanted to ride his horse away. On the other side of the restaurant, a young man in black robes stood at the door and said with a sneer, It's not stupid. Ma Yanshan's body was stiff, and he waved his hands as if signaling to the family priest who was secretly escorting him not to show his face. Ma Xuanhuan rubbed his chin, Stop pretending. In this territory of Yushuan Kingdom, who would dare to think about you, the second son of the Ma family, and you have a big heirs, so you don't have the good habit of bringing followers when you go out. Ma Yinshan turned his head slowly and looked at the young man who seemed very strange but familiar. Ma Yinshan was stunned for a moment, and then he had mixed feelings for a moment. He stood in the rain, his lips moved slightly but he couldn't say anything. Ma Xuanhuan said, Come in for a drink. Ma Yinshan wiped the rainwater from his face, and walked quickly into the wine shop, without the air of a rich and idle person. The goddess of the mountain personally cooks wine to entertain the guests. Ma Xuanhuan said, This is the third meeting. Ma Yinshan said angrily, Why don't you meet your parents? You became on the mountain, and even your parents don't recognize you. Ma Xuanhuan smiled and said, I haven't been close to them since I was a child, and I have no feelings for them. It has nothing to do with whether I go to the mountain to practice Taoism or not. Ma Yanshan's face was livid with anger. Ma Xuanhuan said, Earlier when your family's ancestral hall was discussing, I sat on the beam and listened to this Empress of Xiashan. It seems that there are not many good things, either stupid or mediocre. You may be the only one. The exception is not stupid, so I am willing to wait here for you to drink, but you have to pay for today's drinks. Ma Yinshan gritted his teeth and said, I will pay the bill. Of course I have to pay the bill. The Ma family in Xinghua Lane has today's rich life, and it is not because of you, Ma Xuanhuan. Ma Xuanhuan smiled and turned to look at Song Wei. Listen, aren't you a little clever? Song Wei didn't dare speak up and continued to cook wine with his head bowed. Ma Yinshan raised his head and drank a pot of rice wine brewed by the wine shop. If he couldn't beat the opponent, he insisted on punching him in the face. Ma Xuanhuan said, Do you know who your enemy is? Ma Yinshan remained silent. Ma Xuanhuan smiled and said, I'm asking you something. Ma Yinshan nodded, I heard it by accident when I was a child, so I have paid more attention to my hometown these years, so I have the answer. Ma Xuanhuan said, Haven't you thought about doing something? Ma Yinshan handed over the empty bowl, and the goddess of the mountain took the wine bowl and filled it with rice wine. Ma Yinshan thanked him, but this time he emptied half of the bowl in one breath and said sadly, I tried it but it didn't work. Ma Xuanhuan nodded and said, It's good to have a heart, it's much better than those idiots. Ma Yinshan raised his head and asked in a low voice, You came to Yongjia County this time, do you want to take your parents and Yueme to the mountains together? Ma Xuanhuan smiled and said, You can't take it away. You can hide from the rain and you can't escape the debt. What's more, the debt collector is the most vengeful person in Nipping Lane. Ma Yinshan panicked, Could it be that you can't do it? Ma Xuanhuan couldn't help laughing. Who do you think Ma Xuanhuan is, who can do whatever he wants and be omnipotent? Ma Yinshan said, Then what do you want me for? Ma Xuanhuan smiled and said, I will let Shiwu take you to Jianghu Mountain. There is only such a place. It would be a pity to give it to Ma Yueme. Ma Yinshan said in a deep voice, I want go. Ma Xuanhuan said, Who are you? Do you mean what you say? Ma Yinshan still wanted to speak, but suddenly knocked his head on the table and fell asleep. On the other side of the school, 9 talisman lights disappeared in a flash, sinking into the sleeves of the green shirt. The teacher told the 2 apprentices and students that he was going on a long trip. Zhao Shuxia and Ning Ji didn't ask any more questions. Chen Pinggan shrunk down, returned to the first floor of the bamboo building, took off the night tour on the wall, put it behind his back, glanced at the couplet, walked out of the house. Chen Pinggan went to the top of the mountain, and glanced at the picture on the other side of the town. There are 2 alleys and this is where the mountain comes out. Tomb sweeping day. Yongjia County, the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom. Wearing a green shirt with a sword on his back, he walked on the street with an umbrella, and when he came to the door of a big house, he put away his umbrella. The concierge was a pampered middle-aged man, a pure martial artist who also served as one of the Ma family's nursing homes and asked with a smile, Is this looking for someone? Is there a famous post? The guest in blue shirt smiled and said, I'm looking for someone. I didn't bring a name card. The concierge was full of doubts. If he came to the door today to find someone, was he out of his wits or because he had something urgent to ask for? But the concierge still kept smiling and asked patiently, Who are you looking for? The guest in blue said, I'm looking for Ma Yen and Qin Zheng in Xinghua Lane. The concierge was full of slander. Who do you think you are, dare to look for our head and head housewife? But after all, you are the face of the big family. Let me ask again, excuse me, who are you? The man in green shirt smiled and said, I'm from Huaihuang County, my name is Qin Pinggan, I'm the son of Qin Quan and Qin Shu in Nipping Lane. Just let me know. The concierge frowned endlessly, saying what kind of mud bottle alley? Wait, what about Qin Pinggan in Huaihuang County, Dalichu Prefecture? The concierge swallowed and asked cautiously, which one is Qin Pinggan? Qin Ping narrowed his eyes and said, Don't guess and don't get in the way. Not only do I know what your surname is, what kind of deeds you did in the jianghu in the early years, and what shady livelihoods you have in Yuxuan Kingdom, you probably know better than yourself. To be more clear, even the 18th generation of your ancestors knows. My patience is limited, so I hurried to report. If the good ones don't come, the ones who come are not good? The concierge must have been so fearful that he was so courageous, or maybe he didn't believe that the man in front of him was that person at all, and said with a sneer, It's really a good time to choose death. Qin Ping smiled and said, It's easy to say. He stretched out his hand, grabbed the young master of martial arts by the neck, and threw it into the door. Not dead, how can there be such a cheap good thing? Just as he was about to cross the threshold, Qin Pinggan withdrew his foot, walked to the gate, smashed the gate with one foot, carried a sword on his back and carried an umbrella, walked into the gate, raised his foot and moved the doorman lying on the ground blocking the way. Open, slide all the way to the bottom of the wall. Wearing a green shirt, he walked straight ahead, and a wall of the fairy family blocking the way split open by itself and shattered into powder. It was raining heavily outside Ma's mansion, but inside the mansion the heavy rain stopped without warning. On the gate of Ma's ancestral hall, 2 painted armored door gods are shining brightly about to appear. Qin Pinggan said indifferently, Go back and be honest. The 2 door gods seemed to be imprisoned on the paper on the spot. A chi practitioner came here in a hurry, Yufeng, and shouted angrily, Who is here? He doesn't know how to live or die, dare to trespass on this place. I never imagined that it seemed as if the body-holding technique had been performed, and I would just hover in the air like that. The monk was terrified in his heart, his mind turned sharply, and he began to report himself as a teacher. The cultivators on the mountain, after all, want to talk about the love of incense and fire. If they have no grievances or enmity, why should they fight and hurt their peace? In an instant, the monk's eyes blurred, and when he took a closer look, his Dao heart almost collapsed on the spot. He seemed to be in the hall of the ancestors of the master's sect in a trance. Call the rebels to die. Walking along the way, the man in the green shirt didn't even see him making a move. The martial artist fell to the ground by himself, and the chi trainer seemed to be in a daze. Just like entering the land of no one, Qin Pinggan came to the ancestral hall of the Ma family. On the other side of the doorsteps sat a black-robed young man who was indifferent to family disturbances. Qin Ping smiled and said, Xinghua Lane bastard, long time no see. Ma Xuanhuan said in amazement, I almost don't recognize you, Qin Pinggan. Qin Ping shook his sleeves and 2 people fell out from inside. One was Ma Yinshan who was unconscious, and the other was Yu Shiwu who was unconscious. Ma Xuanhuan finally looked dignified. Qin Ping smiled and said, You haven't activated the formation yet, so why don't you keep it for dinner? In an instant, the world was covered with white mist, and only Ma Kuxuan, who was sitting, and Qin Pingan, who was standing, were left. Within a mountain and water prohibition formation, the sky and the earth were vast and boundless, and then the earth trembled like thunder, and there appeared a majestic golden armor god, a total of 108 gods. Qin Pingan, who was as small as a speck of dust, was besieged in it. Ma Kuxuan could clearly see the sarcasm on Qin Pingan's face. Ma Kuxuan's heartstrings tensed in an instant. Looking around, he saw that apart from the gods in golden armor, one mountain was higher than the other. There were 4 supreme gods. The fourth of the 5 highest in the ancient heavens, the sword-bearer, the armored one, the water god, and the fire god. Ma Kuxuan got up slowly, smiled bitterly, and said, "Qin Pingan, you really dare to think about it." Outside this colorful world, Qin Pingan found the old couple in Xinghua Lane, and said with a smile, "I have arranged 40 ways to die for you. If you count the interest, there will be even more. Don't worry, take your time. Fuck the Avengers for nothing." Sword of Coming Chapter 12:11. Chapter 12:11. The old wine in the clay bottle. Qin Pingan stood where he was. An orphan in Nipping Lane, who grew up eating a variety of meals, finally stood here, knowing all the hardships and hard won along the way. This courtyard occupies a huge area, worthy of being the old residence of the former Prime Minister, with dense trees, high sunlight, and fine golden light all over the ground, like golden silk embroidery, embellished on the tightly stitched blue brick floor. Paved like this, the bricks and the floor are not even drummed, and the craftsmanship of the craftsman is obviously not bad. This is the place where the owner Ma Yan reads. The French style of 7 rooms wide and 8 rafters deep is probably a warehouse that knows etiquette. The tongue-twisting study room is full of precious books that have never been read since they were bought. There are several priceless guqin alone, as well as several half-person high xianxia and golden building boats. The dignitaries and dignitaries in the capital who drank tea and wine all said they were elegant and elegant. If they show a little bit of dazzle, it will always make the master feel that he is a real scholar. In fact, Ma Yan has always wanted to lay green glazed tiles on the roof just like those Taoist temples. This kind of extravagant lineup is easy to be envied and hated by others. When the family ancestral hall is full of jianghu plaques, that is the real scholarly family. One day when the eldest son comes home, he will be happy to see it. Ma Yan thought it was reasonable, so he let his second son Ma Yanshan take part in the imperial examination a few years ago. Sure enough, he passed the examination, which was very embarrassing. The so-called generations of hairpin tassels, right? The well-clothed woman, even though she is nearly 70 years old, still looks like a woman in her 40s. She is indeed the one who wanders among a group of wives all year round. She is obviously calmer than the man beside her. She could still squeeze out a smiling face and pretended to be close to her. On Qin Zheng's fairly fair wrist, she wore a green jade bracelet, and rubbed the corners of her eyes covered with crow's feet, as if she wanted to squeeze out her eyes. Some bitter tears came. Qin Pingan? Is he the son of Master Chen in Nipping Lane? Xuanhuan was one of the best porcelain firing masters in our hometown back then. Kiln, if he didn't hide his secrets and brought out a group of good apprentices, I really don't know what to do. They are the pillars of our dragon kiln. I remember that at that time, the kiln workers said that only Yao from Baoshi Kiln Master dared to say that he is slightly better at firing porcelain than Xuanhuan. That Mr. Lin from the kiln supervision and construction department has a high vision, and he is willing to eat and drink with Xuanhuan often. I can't even envy you. Xuanhuan is such a good person. Why is he gone? God is not open. Good people don't get rewarded. It's hard for you. Yes, if I remember correctly, it was my mother-in-law who went to the clay bottle back then. Xianxia helped deliver the baby and you were born. Fortunately, the mother and child are safe, and now you have a lot of promise, a big promise, better than our Kuxuan. I believe Xuanhuan and Qin Zheng's intentions are obvious, to procrastinate as long as he can. This from Nipping Lane, who was lucky to get rich suddenly, came here too fast. That's how he walked to the back house. Fortunately, Ma Yan had sent several secret letters just now, both to the imperial teacher of the Yushuan kingdom, and to the Qinghuang temple in the capital. Before that, the more Qin Pingan violently murdered, the more he would be wronged today for this guy who didn't die directly at the hands of the Wild Monster clan. The Ma family branch in Xinghua Lane made its fortune by relying on the Golden Goose Kiln, and the top master of the Golden Goose Kiln is Xuanhuan from Nipping Lane. It was Xuanhuan who led those skilled kiln apprentices that the Golden Goose Kiln, which was at the bottom of the list and had a few fires, began to slowly improve. In an instant, the scion figure came to this woman named Qin Zheng. He neither respected the elders, nor thought about the friendship of fellow countrymen, nor did he mean that men would not hit women, so he directly hit Qin Zheng's neck with a knife in his hand. The force was not heavy, just enough to beat Ma's housewife as if she had swallowed a mouthful of burning knife spirits, her face flushed with burning pain. Qin Zheng covered her neck with tears, babbling. She didn't know if she was cursing or complaining. It hurt so much that her nose flowed out. Obviously, the mud-legged kid from Mud Bottle Lane was born. If she really wanted to kill someone, her neck would be broken in an instant, and her head could be moved. Qin Ping smiled and said, "I didn't catch up with you again." Ma Yan, who was already sweating profusely, didn't dare to wipe the sweat from his forehead, and said in a trembling voice, "Qin Pingan, if you have something to say, it's all a misunderstanding. You must not listen to those rumors." Qin Ping smiled and said, "A misunderstanding is a misunderstanding and it's not a big deal." Ma Yan choked for a moment. A young woman with a face similar to that of Qin Jing rushed over with a sword, followed by a group of heroic maidservants in Xingyi, all of whom had swords on their backs with snow-white scabbards and golden tassels. Every time they show up in the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom, riding horses with Ma Yueme, going outside the city for a spring outing, or visiting mountains and rivers, it is a beautiful sight. Seeing her mother's pitiful appearance, Ma Yueme, who came over after hearing the news, scolded angrily, "The thief is so bold that he dares to come to the door to provoke you. Use your sword to meet the enemy." A group of beautiful young women drew their swords one after another, and the long swords came out of their sheaths clangingly, buzzing, and the momentum was not weak. Among them, several long swords flew in the air, revealing their sword lights more than an inch long. They are in Ma's house, they have been honored by Ma Yueme, and their identities are aloof. They are all excellent martial arts talents selected by Ma's masters when they were young. Jian is diligent, not only has a wise master to guide, help teach boxing and give away sword manuals, but also does not lack the fairy family's medicinal food to recuperate their physique. The demeanor of the sword fairy on the mountain. Dozens of long swords stabbed noisily at a man wearing a green shirt and gown, but with a bang they all changed their trajectory midway, like mud hitting a wall, and nailed to the wall beams of the study room behind Ma Yan. The maidservants who always had their eyes above their heads were paled by it. Their sabers are talisman swords carefully forged by the immortal masters on the mountain. Holding such priceless immortal weapons, it is easy to slay demons and demons. Ma Yueme bit her lip and stared at the motionless blue-clothed swordsman. After a moment of silence, she looked complicated and asked, "Are you that Qin Pingan from Luoba Mountain?" Hearing a tip-off from a personal maid just now, Ma Yueme is like falling clouds. Is she really that legendary sword immortal of Lost Mountain? No injustice, no enmity. Why did Qin Pingan come to the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom? Why did he come to the house to make trouble? And he was so unreasonable when he shot. I heard that the pure warriors and monks who were guarding the house in front of them had a worse end than the other. Qin Shanju, who was born in Nipping Lane, did he have some unknown old grudges with his family? That's why all these years that idle guy Ma Yenshan ridiculed the family mansion as a turtle shell? Knowing that the blue-clothed swordsman was Qin Pingan from Luoba Mountain, the maids who practiced sword looked at each other with unbelievable expressions on their faces, and they couldn't believe it. A sword fairy on the mountain who seems to be farther away than the characters in the book, just standing in front of them? In recent years, in private, relying on the mountains and rivers and mansion reports of their young ladies, they have been very concerned about the Lupo Mountain in Chuzhou, which is adjacent to Beiwepiun Mountain, the youngest last hermit official in the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and his best friend Lu Zongzhu. Asking swords together at Jinyang Mountain. They all know a little bit, and because they are pure martial arts and practice swords, the name, Qin Pingan, is not only fascinated for a long time, but in any other situation when they met him they would probably be overwhelmed and excited, and would not be able to sleep for several days at night, even if their admiration and reverence for the legendary Qin Jianxian was not sincere enough. He is the only great sword immortal who is a great master of martial arts in the history of our Aquarius continent. In this way, how dare they continue to make mistakes? Each of them looked uncertain. Qin Pingan kicked Ma Yan's knee and the latter knelt down on the spot. Qin Pingan then closed the umbrella in his hand and hit Ma Yan's face door. The latter smashed the door and fell into the house. I have roughly figured it out. Ma Yan and Qin Zheng, the couple, are indeed seeking a way out for themselves, such as wanting to become a mountain and water in a certain place in Yuxuan Kingdom, but it is more likely that the difference between gods and immortals is still not very reliable. It is estimated that he still hopes to occupy a place with the city god and underworld official. In this way, the netherworld in different ways have been truly achieved. If Luopishan can obtain an orthodox status in Fengdu Hades, if Luopishan wants to make a move, it will be an act of arrogance that breaks the old rules. It can be seen from this that Hong Zhongyu, the civil judge of the city god temple in the capital, moved to Lingzhou, and brought Ji Xiaoping, the chief official of the Department of Yin and Yang, which was a kind of force to give way in the officialdom. The change, in the final analysis, is to make room for the couple. It is obvious that there must be someone in the Ma family to give advice. Don't worry, it will make your dreams come true. Qin Ping said with a smile. Those strange people still haven't shown their faces? Isn't it natural and righteous to use other people's money to eliminate disasters for others? Ma Yueme swept into the house and helped Ma Yan, whose abdomen hurt like a knife twisting. Qin Ping glanced sideways at Ma Yan, who was sweating profusely in the room. He couldn't bear the pain so much. If he wanted to achieve the golden body of the gods, he could only rely on the secret medicine ointment from Yang's pharmacy. The figure in the green shirt flashed, shrunk to the mountains and rivers, and disappeared from the courtyard out of thin air. In the Ma family's mansion in Yongjia County, there are 3 earth immortals, 1 yuanying and 2 golden elixirs, enshrined by the family on the stage and behind the scenes. 2 of them have changed their identities incognito. The old yuanying is an old patriarch who destroyed the immortal mansion in the old Baishuang dynasty in the south of Beipingzu. After the war ended, he did not rush to restore the orthodox tradition of the Mountain Gate. Instead, he traveled all the way north, bypassing Luojing, passing through Dadu, and finally entered the Ma clan of Yongjia County, the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, as the chief priest. The other 2 Jindan Earth Immortals, a formation master and a ghost, each have disciples and followers, and the palm-sized territory houses so many outsiders, so the Ma family has a strong family background. There are also 2 martial arts masters, 1 male and 1 female. The male is Shinku, the concierge of the martial artist of the 5 realms, is his personal disciple, and Ma Yueme is his closed disciple, are taught by him. There is also a female martial artist who is also in the golden body, but compared to Shinku she is less famous. As for how to enter the Ma family, she always has her own story. Of course, from the Ma family in Xinghua Lane to the Ma family in Yongjia County, the biggest support of this family has always been Ma Kuxuan. Since the concierge didn't have time to report his identity, and because Qin Ping walked almost straight to the courtyard, no one could stop Qin Ping along the way. It is estimated that this group of big men who look down on princes and princes are not clear about the inside story for the time being. In a simple study room, there is an ugly middle-aged scholar sitting at the table, a large white inkstone with banana leaves, colored ink ingots that are not exchanged for gold, and a book spread on the desk. It is a book about Fox Fairy and Narcissus Note. The scribe still has a plate of pastries from a time-honored shop in the capital at hand. While flipping through the book, he is chewing on the soft glutinous osmanthus cake. The scholar just saw a sentence in the book and couldn't help but sigh. It's not a good omen. It turned out to be the phrase, "Poor green grass grows, and business is exhausted overnight." The well-known young prodigy Ma Che is the proud student taught by this master. The middle-aged scholar laughed at himself. What a strong evil spirit. Does the tree attract the wind? Sure enough, the monthly salary is not for nothing. Immortal money is the hottest thing. Why don't we return the salary to Mr. Ma as it is? Just pat your and walk away? A person who can forcibly break into the Ma family, no matter what the other party's identity or background, it seems that he is not the one with a golden core ghost who dares to say that he will send it out of the house with a sure gift. Begging for the method of longevity is really suffering. He was about to stand up and bravely go there to wade in the muddy water. Suddenly, his back felt chilly, and his whole body felt as if he had fallen into a cave of ice. The next moment, his head was pinned down and smashed on the table. The aura in his body was as frozen as ice, and the 3 souls and 6 souls were trembling. He tried to mobilize a few natal objects, but he lost contact completely as if the mountains were covered by heavy snow. A golden elixir is even more motionless, and the earth immortal is as weak as a vulgar person. Qin Ping spread his 5 fingers, pressed the back of the opponent's head and said with a smile, "I said you are strange people, do you really believe it?" The ghost scholar tried his best to open his mouth and said, "Dare to ask the name of the immortal?" Qin Ping took the heavy inkstone from the table, and slapped the back of his head hard. The inkstone turned into powder, and the ghost stared at the ghost. He felt that the assassin had blown out his brains. The ghost scholar, who was almost out of his wits, had no choice but to beg for mercy. "The forgives the sin?" Qin Pingan asked. "Did the Mas and his wife accumulate Yin virtue by tearing down the east wall and repairing the west wall all these years? Did you teach them? Help them refine locust leaves into natal objects, and thus gain some ancestral protection?" It's just your method to tamper with the merit book of the Xuanhuan temple? It's very clever, not bad. The ghost scholar was astonished. Qin Pingan turned his head and sneered, "Want to run? An oil paper umbrella is as fast as a flying sword, and it walks through the corridor, bringing up a stream of fireflies, and directly pokes the old fairy in the nascent soul realm who has been secretly using the palm-watching method, and nails it to the wall." The nascent soul realm monk with the appearance of an old woman is the housewife Qin Zheng's own person, who has been in charge of Ma Shi's back house maid and handyman all these years. Just because of the scene on the other side of the courtyard, surrounded by clouds and mists, and the strict confinement, the old woman couldn't see the scene inside, which made her extremely horrified. Could it be that she was in the upper 5 realms? It's just that she was about to perform the technique of shrinking the ground to inches, as if the opponent was waiting for this moment, and in an instant, an ordinary oil paper umbrella pierced her chest like a long sword, and the huge momentum made her slip all the way out, her back hit the wall, the heart-piercing pain made the old woman go crazy and wailed. She was about to pull the oil paper umbrella out of her chest with both hands, but just as her fingers touched the oil paper umbrella, she suffered again. A heart-wrenching pain, the old woman knocked her head back heavily. It turned out that the sword energy of the oil paper umbrella rose instantly, and strips of golden flames spread along the palms and arms of the old woman to the whole body with lightning speed. Come on, not only that, those flames flowing like water veins without hurting the skin, muscles and bones, they also slowly penetrated into the soul of the old woman. The domineering fire method caused the old woman's whole body, earth, mountains and rivers to fall like a rain of fire. Burning. It is only said that the heart lake of a monk in the nascent soul realm was instantly boiled by the fire, and the mist rose, and the monk's heart lake turned into a frying pan. Chen Ping let go of his fingers, straightened up, and moved to meet the old woman who was most likely the mastermind of the Ma family. The ghost scholar lay down on the table, and after waiting for a while, the immortal seemed to have gone elsewhere. As Shan Xianxia, he always acted like a dead Taoist but not a poor Taoist. It is not suitable to stay here for a long time. He must leave quickly. He hurriedly sat up, but he wanted to cry all of a sudden, as if mourning his concubine. He said in a trembling voice, "Longhu Mountain Thunder Bureau." It turned out that the xianxia left a thunder formation in the house. In a daze, this golden core ghost seemed to have come to an ancient execution platform. The world was vast and blank. The next moment there was a loud thunder, and suddenly the sky and the earth were far away, and the snow-white curtain was torn apart by a black lightning, followed by dozens of hundreds of lightning, followed by a golden palm as big as a mountain, like opening a door, pulling open a door from the realm of endless void, slowly revealing the whole picture. The majestic in golden armor holding an iron whip stepped out step by step. The golden body was entwined with colorful lightning. Every time after taking a step, the ground trembled endlessly, and the head of the slowly approached the execution platform, overlooking the limp ant ghost on the ground. The indifferent golden eyes of the gods are like 2 golden suns hanging in the sky. For ghosts in the world, is there anything more frightening than this? The yin and yang are the creators and there are gods in the sky. Could this be what the xianxia called smart? Standing in a gloomy room, Qin Pingan stood in a gloomy room, looking at the old woman nailed to the wall with an oil paper umbrella. This handling of swordsmanship was learned from Pei Min's swordsmanship. It takes a lot of practice. Practice makes perfect, so that you can pay back Pei Min in the future. Qin Ping smiled and said, "I won't die for a while. As expected of the old fairy Yuanying, I can carry it for a while depending on the posture. Then we will talk later. I have to go to meet the old Master Shin for a while." The old woman whose soul was cut into pieces whimpered, forgive me." Qin Pingan said, "What's the point of this? It's just a cold dish and the hard dishes are still to come." Without waiting for the old woman to say anything, Qin Ping returned to the courtyard. A vigorous figure flies over the eaves and walks like a stroll in a garden, and finally stands on the wall. The old man is tall and straight, with clean eyes, a long knife on his waist and a long cloth bag in his hand, with an imposing manner. Occasionally there are silk threads winding around the old man's temples, like a snake coiling a mountain. This is a sign that the martial artist is full of energy, so full of energy that he is overflowing, and it is a sign that he is about to break through. As a master of martial arts, as long as he travels far away, he is only one step away from the top of the mountain, even though it is not easy for the king in the south. Shen Ku wore a mutton-fat jade ring finger on his hand. This incognito martial art master, apart from teaching boxing, would also be responsible for boiling eagles for some of the Ma family's children. The finger wrench in his hand is not worth a lot of money, but it is very commemorative. It is a treasured object of the emperor of a small country. During the war, the world was in chaos, and Xinke got it by breaking the finger of the emperor. In the imperial palace, Xinke, who was on a killing spree, had enough of the emperor's addiction. Thinking about it until now, those women are still very interesting. It's a pity that sleeping queens and concubines, such as riding a horse, can't be used as a side dish to talk to people, and you can only drink and savor one or two, which is a pity. Xinke poked the long cloth pouch with unknown weapon on the wall, and asked with a smile, "Where is that fellow?" As a result, the martial arts master found that the atmosphere in the courtyard was not right. By the way, according to my request, the Ma couple has been declaring that they are Wufu of the 5 realms. So in the eyes of these female dolls, it seems that the weight is not enough? It doesn't matter. After today's Xuanhuan, including Ma Yueme, the whole Ma family's children should know the truth. The Ma family in Yongjia County actually spent a little money to invite a true god. From the corner of Xinke's eyes, he glanced at Ma Yueme in the room. After all, the sparring was imminent and he was about to show his fists. The longer the eyebrows are, the better they look. You don't need to apply makeup, you are a natural beauty. Compared with the empress of the small coastal country in her hometown back then, her skin was as white as pork. A maidservant with a sword wanted to use the means of gathering voices to form a thread to remind the guarding instructor that the person who came to the mansion today to provoke him was that Luobashan Xianxian. It's just that for some reason Master Xin seemed to turn a deaf ear to it, which made her a little confused. Master Xin is so heroic? Was he not afraid of Qin Pingan at all? Xinke squinted his eyes and turned his head, looked at the green shirt on the roof and asked, "You are the one here to make trouble?" Qin Ping smiled and said, "The old saying is good. It's not that one family does not enter one family. The old Master Xin should be named Ma." Xinke smiled and said, "Since we are martial artists of the same generation, why bother to fight with words, just see kung fu in fist." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "It's really not easy to find a good person here." Xinke untied the knot at one end of the long cloth bag, then lifted it horizontally, and stretched out his hand to wipe it, revealing the weapon inside, which turned out to be an ancient bronze sword with an exaggerated length. Xinke said slowly, "Young man, you are so brave you really dare to break into any dragon's den or tiger's den. If you don't spare your life you won't live long." Qin Pingan glanced at the long sword and said, "It's a good thing it's not common. You are so young, so murderous." The old man held the sword in both hands, twisted his wrists and shook the sword flower. "Unknown ghosts are not killed under the sword. Tell me what is the name, whether there is a teacher. If there is, I will take your neck and put your head on it later. Go to your teacher's door to give gifts." The vendettas in the rivers and lakes are no better than the fighting skills of chi practitioners on the mountain. The Xuanhuan Kingdom court has always been more relaxed in its management. My name is Qin Pingan, and am not too young for my age. The blue-clothed swordsman smiled and said, "If you can take my head to Luapa Mountain and follow Na House's example of beheading Nan Guangguang, killing people and leaving my head at the mountain gate, that's your skill." When Xinke heard this thunderous name, his eyelids trembled, and he breathed out pure energy and full of fist intent, breaking his skills in an instant, revealing a decadent trend visible to others with naked eyes. The old man tried his best to keep himself on the same spot, and forgot to use the method of gathering voices into a thread. "Excuse me, Qin Jianxian just wants to find someone to talk about the old days, and the old man will not get involved in this kind of personal grievances, so I will leave the Smoky Ma mansion. If Qin Jianxian finds it still an eyesore, this old man can leave the capital and never set foot in Xuanhuan Kingdom again in this lifetime." Qin Ping smiled and stretched out a palm. "It's easy to say, with your feet growing on your body, old Master Xin can go wherever he wants." Xinke was in doubt and cautiously asked in a low voice, "Really?" Qin Ping smiled and said, "It can be serious or not, it's up to you." Without further ado, Xinke threw away the long sword to show his sincerity, pointing his toes and walking with a long figure. When the old man was on the roof all the way, whether he left the Ma mansion or the street all the way to the bustling city, the sun was shining and the spring was warm. When he was on the busy imperial street, Xinke finally let out a long breath. The gate was spinning and it was good to survive. But Xinke seems to have forgotten one detail: even if the shower stopped today, there should be some water stains in the capital of Xuanhuan Kingdom. When Qin Pingan left the courtyard and returned, Qin Zheng and Ma Yan's eyes met, and the latter nodded, indicating that the arrangement had been properly arranged and no one would notice it. Qin Zheng, on the other hand, seemed to have no intention of looking at the maidservant in Tsingyi. There was a little old man with a sad face, carrying a slop bucket that was almost 90% new. The guys from rich and noble families were naturally different from ordinary people's homes, and the outside of the bucket seemed to be embedded with black gold. The Ma family is rich and the mansion is really too big. The old man passed by a remote corridor, and there was a large group of young and strong handymen with nothing to do. The bigger the head, the more powerful it is. One by one, the poor old man put down the slop bucket, squatted behind them, placed side bets, threw a handful of copper coins and lived on a tight schedule. There was no night grass or fat for horses, and this was how he earned some extra money. The old man is often alone, smoking earthy tobacco mixed with elm leaves, which is very choking. In this family, only the second son, Ma Yenshan, is the most unassuming. He carries 2 pots of good wine when he has nothing to do, and likes to chat with the old man. It turns out that the old man used to be the subjugated remnant of the Zhuang dynasty in the south. I was born in a boudoir and always said that when I was young, I had a good figure, appearance and singing skills. I liked to use pastels to paint my eyebrows and faces, and I could write my own lyrics. After walking for more than 3 years at the root of the imperial city of the old country, my voice has not recovered, so I can't get along anymore. Later, I also acted for many famous actors and carried swords. After all, it is still not as good as every year. The Dali Song clan annexed, the tree moved the dead and the living couldn't be suffocated to death by urine, so they went around all the way and entered Ma's house, begging for food. The old man turned his head slowly and found a man with a sword in a green shirt and a long gown. Senior is actually a credit knife man? Waiting here to collect the bill? The old man was shocked. You are? Qin Ping smiled and said, it's a chance meeting, why bother about identity? The old man's face was cloudy and uncertain, and he asked, then let's go to our own business? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, the Ma family in Xinghua Lane has today's blessings to share, and the seniors have made great contributions. This account must be carefully calculated with you. Qin Pingan smiled when the old man disappeared. When the old man saw the sun again, it was supposed to be near Zhur Mountain outside the capital, but the old man found himself standing in Xinghua Lane in Huaihuang County. A young woman with peach blossom eyes and a round face just returned from fetching water from the iron lock well. The old man was stunned and confused. Why is Malinhua so young? The Ma family's kitchen, because the family is not separated, is now 4 generations under the same roof, with luxuriant branches and leaves, and more than 100 mouthfuls of food are all cooked here. If it wasn't for the strict rules of the ancestral hall, otherwise the number of illegitimate children inside and outside the capital who were not qualified to join the Ma family tree would have doubled. The cook who was in charge of the spoon was a woman in her 30s, her tall and straight chest didn't drop at all, so everyone thought she was an unscrupulous vixen. The women chewed their tongues and scolded her in different ways, and the men all wanted to sleep with her. Live and gossip every day, spoiling her in different ways. If she hadn't been able to give Ma Che a little trouble, and Ma Che was recognized as the #1 scholar, she might not have escaped the palm of some Ma Chi's men. She has been a cook in Ma Mansion for many years, and she carries a pair of scissors with her every day for self-defense. The forest is big and there are all kinds of birds. A cesspit is nothing but shit. That young man named Ma Che is a gifted scholar. Everyone in the government and the public thinks that he is a certain gentleman in Xuanhu Academy in the future. Ma Che, a young man who will definitely become a powerful official of Yushuan Kingdom in the future, once blushed and gasped heavily, hugged a plump woman from behind and rubbed against her for a while. The woman was busy in the kitchen again today, steaming several steamed buns with all kinds of fillings. For example, soft-shelled turtles only take the skirt, mandarin fish only take 2 pieces of tender meat from the back of the mouth and cheeks, and there is a kind of stuffing that grows on the termite nest. Bacteria, the taste is extremely plump. The rest of the cooks and women in the house are all far away from this coquettish woman named Yu Qing. She stretched out her hand to stroke the black hair on her temples, then turned her head to look at a green-clothed swordsman sitting on the threshold. She seemed a little puzzled. It was said in the book that a gentleman stays away from the kitchen, but the brothers of the Ma family would not come to the kitchen. Of course they felt that there were too many people here. Not far from the kitchen, there are more than a dozen pots of precious orchids placed on the stone bars under the flower garden shed. She has always been taking care of it. Ma's private kitchen in Yongjia County can make the top rich and powerful in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom give a thumbs up. There are so many gluttons, it is rare to say which one is better, and there is always a question on their lips. Why is the cabbage here more delicious than other places? Because the god of 5 flavors under the Stove Lord's command is only in the capital. But as long as they have tasted Ma Mansion's private kitchen dishes, they will all be wowed. Chen Pingan asked with a smile in his heart. I thought you were Gu Kan's eyeliner here, but now it seems that's not the case. Your surname is Liu? Standing up, Chen Pingan walked into the kitchen, picked up a few heads of purple-skinned garlic from a stove, crushed the garlic, held it in his hand and filled a bowl of fish soup noodles for himself and said with a smile, Eat noodles, it's like garlic, it's like killing without blood, after all it's a bit meaningless. Yu Qing just stared blankly at the inexplicable uninvited guest. As for the other women in the kitchen, they were probably intimidated by this man's aura, and no one dared to speak. Chen Pingan leaned against the stove and before putting down his chopsticks he said with a smile, Xing Ma owes our family a sum of money, not much, 8 taels of silver, less than a dime, but in our hometown at that time, it was not considered small money. I used to have the courage to go to the door to ask for it twice, but I still didn't get it. Passing by Xinghua Lane, there are even more times without knocking on the door. After eating this bowl of noodles, this first sum let's settle the debt. Ma Kuxuan still has a heart, so please move you out of the mountain to protect the Ma family. The woman turned sideways, cast a blessing and smiled softly, You are Qin Shanju, right? Qin Pingan put down the bowls and chopsticks and burped, It tastes really good to go to the door to collect debts. If you have enough food and drink then start working. Yu Qing smiled sweetly, Could it be that disciples of Wensheng can commit murder indiscriminately in broad daylight? Qin Pingan stretched out his hand and patted the stove. The palm of his hand was shining with golden light, and countless thin golden lines spread out. He walked straight to the door, then turned his head and smiled, I hope you can chat like this next time we meet. Yu Qing squinted her eyes, pinched a golden talisman with her 2 fingers, looked around, the scene of the world was changing, she seemed to have come to a fairy mansion. In her field of vision, a majestic and isolated green mountain, with a long green river at the foot of the mountain, rows of buildings in the mountain, dense and gorgeous, and cranes hovering in the sky. Yu Qing looked down and saw that it was a strange caisson that was not suspended in the air but stuck to the ground. I saw a golden lotus flower engraved in the center of the algae well, surrounded by 2 yellow dragons with tails, and 16 flying heavens outside, with circles of patterns expanding outwards, and finally a circle of ancient inscriptions that even she could not recognize the content of. It stands to reason that with her state and family education she should not be afraid of this kind of formation that belongs to the fantasy world, but the problem is that she doesn't feel that this place is a formation, but some kind of real formation. Mysterious situation. Rationality and deduction told her that this was a formation, while sensibility and intuition told her that it was an illusion. She held her breath and concentrated, not daring to breathe casually here, lit up the secret talisman used to quantify the time scale, flicked her sleeves, and threw a magic spell into the open space in the distance, and the dust was flying all of a sudden. She frowned slightly, this way except for the abundance of aura, the world seems to be the same. Yu Qing squatted down, picked up some soil and finally ground it into powder. She looked intently and found that the soil was real, which made Yu Qing feel like falling clouds. Means of the month? And according to some family secret records, some monks on the top of the mountain can carry the cave with them. Yu Qing carefully sacrificed a pocket-sized pagoda with double eaves, and gently threw it into the air to protect the 1-acre 3-point land where he was standing. Then he slowly rose against the wind, trying to overlook this secret place from a high place. As his stature rose, Yu Qing had a panoramic view of the white jade arched bridge in front of him. There were all kinds of strange beasts crouching on the watchtowers of the bridge, and there was also a carved stone bully with dragon scales under the bridge. Watery. Yu Qing finally found a big living person, a young woman in emerald green feathers, not in the mountains, but walking along the green water with no end in sight. Walking by the water, her steps were not fast. Yu Qing hesitated after a while. She still went to the Tsueyu woman to ride the wind, and landed on the other side of the river. The woman clearly saw Yu Qing, but she just raised her eyelids and continued to walk slowly by the river. Yu Qing soon realized that I can see the clues. Every time this young and strange woman takes a step, some subtle scenes around her that are imperceptible at first glance will change from line drawing to painting. The snow-white carp jumping out of the water in the river turned into a gorgeous golden color. Is she here? To check for omissions and fill in the gaps, to add color to the picture scroll of heaven and earth? Yu Qing lowered her head and looked at the talisman in her hand. Sure enough, the real time passed by about a flick of a finger, but nearly a quarter of an hour had passed since she counted Yu Qing silently in her heart, which made Yu Qing feel more and more heavy. When she got up, the woman on the other side turned her head. She had a beautiful face that was still white and tender, but there was a dead silence in her eyes. When she stared blankly at the incomparably fresh Yu Qing, the expression on the woman's face was extremely complicated. Ridicule, pity, envy, hatred. Yu Qing endured the strangeness in his heart and asked, "Dare to ask your friend's name?" The woman said hoarsely, "You can call me Su Jiaoxia. The real name of the monster race is Shao Xing. I come from the wilderness. One mind is trapped here and there are already 12,000 fingers." Yu Qing was puzzled. According to the other party's count, it was only 12 hours a day and night. The woman who called herself Su Jiaoxia suddenly contorted her face, as if she had guessed the other person's thoughts. She put her fingers on her cheeks. "It's only been a day and night, is it? 4,800,000 moments, 4,800,000. She put away her mad look in an instant, pointed to the talisman in Yu Qing's hand, covered her mouth with a happy expression immersed in great joy, and a low, piercing laughter came out from between her fingers. "It's better to be alone than to be happy with others. Now that you are with me, it's not so difficult. Have you noticed that the speed of time is getting slower and slower, but your thoughts are getting faster and faster? Here you and I are both insomniacs, so pitiful." In the small world full of ancient gods, Ma Xuanhuan said, "It seems that Yu Shiwu was wrong. You are not a nascent soul realm with a 80% possibility, you are a jade raw realm. When did it happen? Right here. How many days?" Ma Xuanhuan used the talisman to cooperate with the technique of inviting the gods to come to the truth, and the more than 100 ancient golden armored gods from the Thunder Department seemed to be overwhelmed by the mighty way of heaven. Just being swept by the phantom of the sword-wielding swordman, the sword light was shining brightly as if splitting the sky and the earth. Half of the golden armored was cut off on the spot, and the golden body suddenly shattered, turning into countless golden lights. The god of Vulcan raised his hand. The heaven and the earth were like a furnace, the flames melted, and he didn't know the yin and yang charcoal, so why burn it alone? In the blink of an eye the world is clear. Ma Xuanhuan didn't care about this. Chen Pingan regretted, "It's a pity that these golden body fragments are fake. Ma Xuanhuan, aren't you very capable? Why don't you just invite the real bodies of these gods?" The scene of Xiaoxiandi receded like the tide, and the two returned to the real situation. Ma Xuanhuan sat back on the steps at the gate of the temple, and Chen Pingan stood on the square. Ma Xuanhuan said with a smile, "Didn't it mean that Xuanhuan was specially retreating for me without the Jade Raw realm by his side, relying on the dual status of nascent soul realm sword cultivator and 10-realm martial artist? He still felt that this time of revenge he walked into Yongjia County alone. Is it an unreliable thing?" Qin Ping smiled and said, "You have such a big face." Ma Xuanhuan glanced at the outside, and saw that the real situation of the entire Ma mansion had already fallen into a state where time and water stagnated. Ma Xuanhuan asked, "The natal supernatural power of your flying sword can control a long imitation river of time? How much area can it cover? How long will it last?" Ma Xuanhuan asked again, "Why don't you show up with the appearance of the Great Wall of Sword Qi because you think it's too ugly to see people?" Ma Xuanhuan asked again, "You know that I am not particularly concerned about the survival of the Ma family, so I am not curious why I still choose to appear here? In fact, Ma Xuanhuan doesn't like to chat with people, but this fellow from the same age in front of him is the only exception." Ma Xuanhuan sighed, "Why are you starting to be dumb again?" Ma Xuanhuan stood up, "Then play with you." Qin Pingan finally smiled and said, "Then play with you anyway more than once." Ma Xuanhuan twitched the corners of his mouth. "I lost twice to Chao Ci and then I lost 3 times to Chao Ci. Qin Pingan, don't think that now that you have a few more identities you can get back the game." Qin Pingan asked suspiciously, "You want sneak into the fairyland, right?" Ma Xuanhuan suddenly said, "You have guessed all of this? Lord Yingwen's mind is really bright, no wonder he can sit in the summer palace." Qin Pingan was silent. Ma Xuanhuan smiled and said, "Is this why the praying mantis catches the cicada and the oriole follows?" Qin Pingan seemed to want to show a panicked face but suddenly smiled, "I want pretend, I want act, I lied to you twice, am already very sorry." Ma Xuanhuan stretched his waist and walked down the steps. Qin Pingan said, "By the way, what a coincidence, my natal flying sword is called the bird in the cage." While speaking, Qin Pingan had a bright red robe on his body. In the courtyard, Ma Yan and Qin Zheng and the green shirt had everything to say, especially Ma Yan, who claimed that even if he was misunderstood by Qin Shanju, since he couldn't argue, he was willing to use his own life in exchange for Qin Quan's life. Qin Zheng suddenly knelt on the ground, singing like a husband and wife, and immediately followed up with a sincere expression of heartfelt words, "Qin Pingan, if you think that your mother's death is also related to us, then I will pay you another life. Just beg you let our Ma family go, please don't blame others." Qin Ping turned a blind eye and just said with a smile, "Why do you continue to procrastinate? What's the point?" As he spoke, he took out a few flying sword messages from his sleeve and crushed them all. It's probably useless to bring in reinforcements. A maidservant in Xingyi rushed forward to Qin Pingan without any warning. A dagger slipped out of her sleeve, and with a flash of sharp edge she tried to fight close to him with the courage to die generously. Another sword servant jumped forward, stretched out his hand in the air, and controlled the long sword on the wall in his hand, and slashed at the head in the green shirt. Afterwards, the maidservants in Xingyi jumped up and down one after another, seeing death as home, and rushed to kill Qin Jianxian without hesitating their lives. Qin Pingan raised an arm, put his fingers together and in an instant, cut off a dozen maidservants in Xingyi. Their bodies fell to the ground, and the courtyard was covered with blood, which was horrible. Even Ma Yan, who was mentally prepared, felt that this scene was too bloody, and Qin Jing even vomited on the spot. Qin Pingan said indifferently, "As a dead man, you will die if you ask for it. You asked for it yourself." Qin Jing lowered his head and bent over, retching unceasingly, seemingly losing his composure, but the woman was secretly in high spirits. In the roadside wine shop on the other side of the Xiao mountain, the worried mountain empress Song Wei drank by herself, absent-minded. The heavy rain was pouring, the day was as dark as night, and the raindrops hit the windows in a hurry, making the noise like a new ghost. In such a bleak scene of the rain curtain on the road, two guests unexpectedly came, a tall man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, and a graceful and elegant young man in Confucian shirts. After taking off the bamboo hat, Song Wei glanced at the road outside the house, and saw the young man with the appearance and demeanor of a banished fairy, holding a very handsome white horse for feet in the wind and rain. Song Wei pointed to the wooden sign at the door and said apologetically, "Both guests, I'm sorry, the shop is closed and no guests are welcome." The tall man stepped across the threshold first and said with a bright smile, "Just looking for a place to hide from the rain, we bring our own drinks and wait for someone here by the way. If we are not allowed to enter we will go back and wait outside the door." The mild-mannered young man in Confucian shirt reached out and took off the wooden sign at the door, casually threw it on the counter and said with a smile, "Since it is open for business, there is no reason not to make money." Song Wei was hesitant and it could be seen that these two people were not easy people. After all, she is a local mountain god, and the shop is located near Xiao Mountain. If she can't tell the level of someone's realm, then there is only one possibility, and it must be a person who has accomplished Taoism. The tall man raised his chin towards the counter, and the young man in Confucian shirt went behind the counter and took 2 jars of wine from the shelf. Song Wei was an eye-opener. "Is this what you call your own drinks?" Immediately afterwards, a graceful young woman walked in, wearing a wooden hairpin with cloud pattern on her hair, wearing a cotton dress, and stepped on a pair of embroidered shoes. She came out of the torrential rain, but the embroidered shoes on her feet were spotless. She and the mountain empress introduced themselves with a smile. "My name is Gu Lingyan, and I am my young master's liaison girl." Gu Lingyan turned against customers, went to the backyard and brought a brazier over, then took a large bag of charcoal and put it at his feet, poured it into the basin with a rustle, lowered his head and took a breath, and the charcoal lit up the fire. She picked up the iron tongs, skillfully moved some old ashes and pressed them on the charcoal fire, leaned forward, stretched out her hands to warm the fire, gently shook her white hands like snow, raised her head and smiled and asked, "Madam the shopkeeper, there are taro in the shop. Is it zongzi or zongzi? I want to keep warm here while cutting window grills and packing shoe soles." Song Wei shook his head. "I thought this was the person they were waiting for? Now that it's her time, what's next?" Gu Lingyue looked at the mountain lady who was sitting alone at a table and said with a soft smile, "Ma'am, yours really big and your waist is too thin. You sit on a long bench, buttocks. It looks more plump if you get up at night and sit on the toilet, tsk. Song Wei became angry from embarrassment, and just because she couldn't distinguish the identities and backgrounds of the few of them for the time being, she forcibly restrained her displeasure. Lu Xianying spit out his drink on the spot and quickly apologized, I'm sorry, I'm a thin-skinned person, I haven't seen the world, so I don't want to hear this." Gukan looked calm. Gu Lingyan said one lady at a time, "Mount Jura was renamed Xiao Mountain. The change sounds really nice. It changed from vulgar to elegant at once. However, I heard that Xiao Mountain is under the jurisdiction of Lujiao Mountain, the crown prince of Xia Mountain. Changshan God, who is so tall that he can't be taller, seems to have lost his official title. It's just what happened in the past few days. Ma'am, do you have any inside information? You might as well tell it and listen, just treat it as a meal for my son, it's also considered great hospitality. Song Wei's face was ashen and he said in a deep voice, Miss Gu, I don't care what kind of teacher you are, what kind of realm you are in this Xishan region, please be careful with your words, and be careful that misfortune comes out of your mouth. According to the division of the Confucian Temple's landscape genealogy, Lujiao Mountain Changfenghen, the mountain of the crown prince of Izhou Xishan, is a third-rank god. It stands to reason that to deprive such a high ranking of the orthodox official status, a resolution needs to be passed by the Confucian Temple of China and the Dali dynasty. Even if Tong Wenchang is Chang Fenghan's immediate boss, he has no right to dispose of such a high-ranking mountain privately. Therefore Tong Wenchang, who was newly promoted to be the great god, did not follow the rules at all. Therefore not only Chang Fenghan has submitted an ultimatum to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple to appeal, but it is said that most of the chief officials of the 20th Division of Lujiao Mountain have jointly submitted a document to the Dali dynasty. Whether it can keep the old position is hard to say for the time being. After all, Tong Wenchang has just been promoted to the king. The Confucian Temple and the Dali Song clan must consider this point. But generally speaking, the greater possibility is a compromise. Lujiashan, after receiving orders from the Zhongtu Confucian Temple and the Dali Ministry of Rites, Chang Fenghan's rank will be relegated to several levels. However, one possibility cannot be ruled out. Tong Wenchang suffered a big somersault. Chang Fenghan and Lujiashan did not change at all, but Tong Wenchang's prestige fell to the bottom. No matter what the situation is, before the Confucian Temple has given a final conclusion, in this Aquarius continent, Song Wei really does not believe that there are a few Qi practitioners who are qualified to speak sarcastic remarks about Changshan God in the territory under the jurisdiction of Lujiao Mountain. Gu Lingji sneered and said, Why bother to struggle to the death? It must be a situation where the tree fell and the monkeys scattered. To file a complaint? Who is the complaint? Is it a complaint against Tong Xinjun or Qin Shanzhu? Don't just send the complaint paper directly. Qin Shanzhu has it. It's interesting just like some bridge passages written in some books, slapping the gavel, angrily scolding anyone in the hall, dare to sue the official? Gukan said, Okay, it'll be your dumb. Gu Lingyu carefully looked at Gukan's face, he was not angry and there was a smile in his eyes. Lu Xianying began to speak from his heart, Why do you have to call Pei Qian? She is Qin Pinggan's junior. What's the point? Our two worries are different. How to say? You are worried that he will encounter an accident. I'm not worried about this at all. I am only worried that he will be caught by people if he is over there, and will be bitten by mad dogs. Qin Pinggan is doing things, there is nothing to worry about. It's different this time. What are you afraid of? Brothers fighting tigers, father and son soldiers in battle, Qin Pinggan still has us. Gukan was silent for a moment. Lu Xianying, do you know what I envy you the most? Lu Xianying's eyes lit up. Tell me about it. I have the biggest shortcoming, which is that I don't know my own strengths. Gukan said, In life, people don't use their brains at all, they only rely on their intuition to eat. Lu Xianying waved his hand, He'll tell you something, don't spread it, Blacksmith Ruan is already in fairyland. I can tell. Lu Xianying wondered, which I saw it? Gukan sneered and said, I'm different from someone who only knows how to practice swords, and I've also learned a little qi watching and superficial deduction. Aptitude is good, talent is high, and there is no need for two things. There is no need to learn those messy heresies. Is there something wrong? A black-clothed woman with tied in a bun with light steps crossed the threshold, holding a green bamboo walking stick. Gu Lingying raised his head and looked towards the door. Hey, the Lord is here. Pei Qian cupped his fists and saluted Lu Xianying and Gukan. Lu Xianying smiled and waved. Sit down and drink. Gukan nodded in greeting. Song Wei's heart tightened and he recognized the other party's identity. Pei Qian, one of the 4 great masters of Aquarius Continent's martial arts review. Qin Pinggan's founding disciple of Lost Mountain. Pei Qian bowed his hands to Song Wei again. I have seen Song Shanshan. Song Wei hurriedly got up and gave a blessing. The little is now called Song Wei, and he is the god of the mountain bending back. Pei Qian took out a piece of gold leaf and said with a smile, I'm going to fight with the goddess of the mountain to make wine from the market in Sijiao. Song Wei panicked and said, You don't need to buy wine, it's my honor and blessing that this little can invite Grandmaster Pei to drink a few jars of Panbin wine brewed by Ziyishan today. Pei Qian nodded and said, The junior is impolite, thank you in advance. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue in amazement. Little Heightenback then has become so sensible. Gukan smiled knowingly. Pei Qian took the altars of Xinjia wine and put them on the table. Qian is a boy of the Qing dynasty. Wine is a hook for poetry and a broom for sweeping sorrow. When you go out and spend money to drink, you don't need to ask the price, just wandering the rivers and lakes. Gu Lingying frowned and said with a smile, Miss Pei, let's say goodbye at the ferry. I never thought we would meet again so soon. It's really fate. Pei Qian smiled and said, if we meet again on the battlefield of Beipingzu, we will be more destined. In the courtyard, Ma Yan, the head of the family, began to scold Qin Pingan for killing innocent people indiscriminately, ashamed of his status as a disciple of a saint. Qin Ping smiled and said, so what can I do? Today's massacre of the Ma family in Yongjia County is unknown. Ma Yan shouted angrily, Qin Pingan, you are simply insane. Qin Zheng straightened up slowly and said with a voice from his heart, you in Nipping Lane, do you know that through a mirror image soon the entire Aquarius continent will know what you did today? Qin Pingan's expected panic expression did not appear. This made the woman feel a little uneasy. Qin Ping smiled and said, you are still so stupid and bad, patronizing and scheming against me, so don't think about it carefully. The first sentence I said after seeing you, why is it to arrange 40 ways to die for you? What? How can one die so many times? Qin Pingan smiled and said, do you want me to cooperate with you and say a few more words? It's like in the eyes of me, Qin Pingan, you are ants whose lives are as cheap as grass. If you trample to death, you will think your shoes are dirty? Another example is that I will definitely put you with you. Qin Zheng will be hacked into pieces, even if a little information leaks out. With my current status, who would dare to avenge you? Qin Ping pointed to the jadeite bracelet on the woman's hand and said with a smile, as the hub of this mirror, you should check carefully to see if there is any spiritual energy left in it. Qin Zheng quickly reached out to touch the bracelet. Her fingers felt like ice, which made the woman change color instantly. Qin Ping waved his sleeve casually, and the blood of the severed corpses on the ground flowed slowly into them like ebbing tide, and those severed corpses began to retreat into the air one after another, and the daggers, long the sword was put back into the hands of the corpse, and all the trajectories were exactly the same. The corpses were finally pieced together and retreated to their original positions one by one. This accident is like a poor performance by the grassroots team, or it is like reading 2 pages of a book, turning one page and then turning the other page. How can all the words be different? Only the feeling of reading 2 pages of text remained in my heart. For the group of maidservants in green clothes, the pain of being cut off their waists and limbs before, and the lingering fear of dying, seemed to still linger in their hearts. A woman screamed suddenly. It turned out that Qin Zheng's wrist with the jade bracelet was cut off by a ray of sword energy and fell to the ground. Qin Pingan came to Ma Yan's side, stretched out his hand to grab the latter's neck, dragged him to Qin Zheng who was writhing in pain, and threw Ma Yan to the ground. Qin Pingan raised his foot and stepped on Ma Yan's head, forcing him to stare at the severed wrist with his bloodshot eyes wide open. Qin Ping gently twisted the toe of his shoe, and one side of Ma Yan's cheek was and his bones were exposed. Qin Pingan asked calmly, do you know how much money can be exchanged for the 8 Qian silver back then, and how much medicinal materials can I buy at the Yang family medicine store? Do you know why I often go to your Xinghua lane, squatting on the side of the road? Why did you see that stall selling candied haws? The old master Shenku, who thought he was out of danger, suddenly turned his head when he was about to leave the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. On the bustling street behind him, everyone smiled and looked at him in unison. This made Shenku, who was used to seeing the world, a chill down his spine for a moment. The sun was shining brightly, and it was like seeing a ghost during the day. Thousands of people are the same, men, women, old and young, different identities, different figures, different attires, but they all have the same face. The old man, who was hiding his identity on credit, saw a stall appear out of thin air in Xinghua Lane. There was a middle-aged man selling candied haws. The middle-aged man and the old man looked at each other and said with a smile, you have poor eyesight. You don't know that there are gods 3 feet above your head, you don't know the blue sky is high, the yellow earth is thick, but the moon is cold and the sun is warm to fry people's life. In the ruins of the immortal mansion, Yu Qing, who had lost his Tao heart, left the riverside in a daze, and climbed up the stairs along the mountain road. Sitting on the steps is a young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown, with an ever-changing face, using different voices, repeating a sentence, among the dust in the world, I would rather love or hate. At the same time, both sides of the mountain road are covered with hanging ghosts, densely packed, tens of thousands, spreading all the way to the top of the mountain. The death patterns were exactly the same, they were all pierced through the temple by a long sword and hung in the air. The old woman was being burned at the stake. The ghost scholar is in a thunderstorm. All the deep-rooted hatred in the world is a jar of old wine, waiting for the Avengers to uncover the mud seal, and you can drink it. The real Qin Pingan actually stayed in the Ma's ancestral hall from the beginning to the end, moved a chair with his back to the gate, with a horizontal sword on his knees, holding a yangjian gourd and sipping wine. Sword of Coming Chapter 12:12. Chapter 12:12. Revenge is a solo drink. A hearty revenge is a booze that never gets drunk. Drink at your own discretion, drink slowly and enjoy yourself alone. Someone was wearing a golden crown and a green gauze robe lingering in purple air, holding a glistening white jade Ganoderma lucidum in his hand, and a pair of plain white cloud shoes on his feet. About 30 years old, with a flawless appearance, a clean body and not a very handsome face. Just like the exiled son in fairy tales, his home is surrounded by mountains and rivers, with dense flowers and bamboos. It is also like a Taoist living in seclusion in the mountains who came out of a poem about wandering immortals, practicing with thatch and occasionally came to the world. He strolled in the courtyard, counting steps to see a scene. Surrounded by different colors and scrolls, there are pavilions, terraces and lofts drawn with meticulous brushwork, freehand gardens with ink and wash, and courtyards with green landscapes. Not long ago, Qin Pingan just made his appearance look younger when he entered the fairyland. This wuxia street in Yongjia County, where rich and powerful families gathered together in the previous dynasty, was once the emperor and a courtier. In addition to this old prime minister's mansion, there are two adjacent mansions, both of which have changed owners. The family status has long been included in Ma Shi's pocket. Because the Ma family adheres to an ancient motto of separate households without division, division of households means demolition of households. After settling here for nearly 30 years, they have never divided households and households, and they are not allowed to set up household registrations and divide family wealth. The three mansions have a side door connected to each other, so the small half of the street is all surnamed Ma. In that courtyard, Qin Pingan, who was dressed in blue and had a sword on his back, raised his foot, and the soles of his shoes finally left Ma Yan's cheeks. He seemed to think it was dirty and rubbed against the blue bricks on the ground and said with a smile, "Ma Yan and Qin Zheng can go down to heal their wounds." Broke his wrist, and the several golden sore medicines secretly handed down by the old master Shin probably don't work anymore. The several rare panacea in the shaped cabinet in the warehouse of Ma's secret room, together with the plaster from the Yang's medicine shop, may be sent if you need it. Remember to use it sparingly. After all, ointment is a rare item that can be used less than one bottle. With luck, Pulu, an old fairy in the nascent soul realm, can use the deadwood rejuvenation technique of the doctor. Take it back, Ma Yueme. You can leave with your parents. Remember to call Ma Che Ma Chuan, and Ma Bai over, just 3 for 3. Ma Yueme squatted down, tremblingly picked up the severed wrist still wearing the jade bracelet. She stood up, staring at the green shirt. Ma Yan supported Qin Zheng, who was almost fainted, and staggered out of the courtyard. Ma Yan did not forget to remind Ma Yueme to follow quickly, and hinted with her eyes not to be impulsive. Seeing that the woman didn't move, Qin Pingan asked, "Can eyes kill people? Otherwise you stay there, stare at the place with your eyes wide open and watch for a while? Can you watch the murderer?" Ma Yume's eyes were filled with deep hatred and she said, "Chen, you either kill me today or I will let you in your luopashan for the rest of my life." Before Ma Yueme could finish his harsh words, Qin Pingan smiled, put his fingers together and swiped at the woman lightly. The sword light was bright like a wire-cutting tofu. Ma Yueme, who looked astonished, lowered her head in a daze. The sword light cut Ma Yume's body in half obliquely, and her stomach and intestines slid all over the ground, even with a faint white mist and heat. Those maidservants in Tsing-yi who had died once before, when they witnessed such a disgusting horror scene as bystanders, most of them began to bend over and vomit. Sitting on the steps, Qin Pingan took out a booklet from his sleeve, opened a page with his head down, looked up at the tragic situation not far away and said with a smile, "Revenge is not a steaming dish, served in a hurry. As long as you don't eat it, it will get cold soon." In the dark, vast and indistinct, Ma Yueme looked around. For some reason she was already in the Ma's ancestral hall, sitting on a chair. Following the voice, Ma Yueme turned her head to look at the gate, and there was an extra chair, sitting a man in green shirt with a horizontal sword on his knees, with a hosta on his hair, drinking. That Qin Pingan was completely different from Qin Jianxian, who killed people casually while talking and laughing in the courtyard. At this moment, Qin Pingan and Mayu's eyebrows looked more like a statue of a god. He had no expression on his face, his eyes were indifferent, and he was sitting on the corpse of a god. At the same time, there is an old incense burner on the altar table under the ancestral statue of Ma's ancestral hall, and each stick of incense is the name of a Ma's child. Mayueme was also horrified to find the dismembered self in the courtyard, standing beside an illusory ghost. Mayueme, she was covering her face and weeping secretly. In the courtyard, Qin Pingan turned his head to look at the entrance of the courtyard and reminded, Mayen Qinzheng, let you take advantage of it, 2 for 3. Within a quarter of an hour, if those two didn't come here seeing me, I will put the blame on you. There is no way, since you are the heads of the family, you have to bear more. The couple hurriedly walked, not daring to stop for a moment. As for Mayumai's real fate, whether it is life or death or life and death like a maidservant in Tsingyi, they can't care about it for the time being, they can only suppress their hatred and make other plans. After all, the incense of the Ma family in Xinghua Lane belongs to their husband and wife, and even more so to the eldest son Ma Kuxuan. Besides, it is like the youngest daughter Mayueme or the second son Ma Yenshan. That's all. After that, Qin Pingan stretched out his hand and grabbed a handful of pine needles from a verdant ancient pine tree in the courtyard. He held it gently in the palm of his hand, and then looked at the two maidservants in Tsingyi who were the first to attack him. If I remember correctly, are you called Xuanhuan, Chuyun? Among the 16 sword servants, only 2 of you are 4 realms warriors for the time being. You have a first-class martial arts qualification. It was Qin Zheng's mother-in-law who secretly instructed you to teach you how to be a dead soldier without telling your nominal master, Mayueme, so that I can confirm my statement that I am killing innocent people here today. And just curious, what reward do you deserve? Oh. Is it simply that Madame Ma has adopted you orphans, so he must humiliate his ministers and die? The 2 young girls are dressed in the same silk, satin and green clothes. They only have their own ingenuity in the details. Among them, the maid named Xuanhuan has a light body and wears a crown of white horns. She is known as the Maid of Yushuan Kingdom. The Tsingyi sword attendant named Qiu Yun had a plump and heavy figure. She lowered her head at the moment, and she didn't even have the heart to look at that Qin Jianxian. The girl with the white-horned crown gritted her teeth and said, "This servant only hates that I am low-level and can't hurt Qin Jianxian at all. Even if I want to fight to the death, I can't do it." Qin Ping said with a smile, "This is not accurate enough. If you die, you have at least half done it." Between the words, with a flick of the fingers, an emerald green pine needle pierced through the eyebrows of the maidservant with the white-horned crown as fast as a flying sword. Qin Ping looked at the detailed records of the 2 Machuan children in the account book in his hand, smiled, turned his head to look at Qiu Yun and said, "I'm worried that Ma Yan and Qin Zheng are forgetful. You have always been close to Machuan. You must, if you don't want this favorite lover to die inexplicably, then please trouble Miss Chuyun to come and win a chance for that Mr. Ma. But remember, don't reveal the inside story of this place, don't say a word, or don't blame me for sending you to make a pair of desperate mandarin ducks." Qiu Yun had the courage to leave Ma's patriarch's study and reception room. Sure enough, the unpredictable and cruel Qin Jianxian did not continue to embarrass her. At the same time, the sword attendant wearing the white-horned crown returned to her original appearance again. She stretched out her fingers subconsciously in a trance, and rubbed the eyebrows that should have been pierced by a pine needle. In such a short period of time she died twice, which made her murderous aura suddenly diminished, but she still forced a breath of pure true energy, deliberately making herself look murderous, and said in a deep voice, "Is this what Qin Jianxian is capable of? To kill or cut is nothing more than a nod, not to mention flying swords repeatedly killing people. It is a mountain of knives and a sea of fire, cooking in an oil pan. Qin Jianxian just uses them one by one, begging for mercy with you, even if I have no backbone." Qin Ping closed the account book, smiled and said, "You don't lose, you have a good heart. You are still young and your martial arts level is not enough. Now it is just Mayumai's help. Wait until you learn the 7 or 8 costs of old Master Shen. It is estimated that in the future he will be the powerful accomplice of the Ma family in Yongjia County, specializing in some shady activities, or traveling at night, eradicating dissidents, or hindering the immortal masters in the family to worship." The maidservant with the white-horned crown said with a stern face, "Even if I become a ghost, even if I crawl, I have to climb to Qin Jiangxian's hometown, and go to that downcast mountain to avenge my revenge." Qin Pingan squinted his eyes and smiled, nodded and said, "It's easy to say. You should be satisfied in life. You should repay kindness and revenge. Enemies and avengers, both sides rely on their own abilities. is just a senior who has gone through many rivers and lakes. Let me tell you a principle of the world: when the situation is not in control, young people should not speak fiercely, and their eyes should be fierce. It's okay, pay attention in the next life. In an instant, another pine needle pierced through her eyebrows with strong piercing force. It brought the maidservant in Xingyi to hit the wall, slumped on the ground and died. The maidservant in Xingyi raised her head. The world was dark, the wind was blowing, and it was biting cold. She looked around in a daze, and it was an extremely strange scene, lonely and lifeless. Is he really dead this time? Already in Xuanhuan Road? Will there be the so-called ghost gate in the book next, Mengpo Bridge? She was standing in the middle of a muddy road after a heavy rain. At this moment she turned her head and saw a poor old woman riding a fine horse. The saddle and bridle were extraordinarily gorgeous. It is carefully raised by a wealthy family, and ordinary people must never own such a thing that is not easy to come by. Seeing the maidservant in green clothes on the road, the old woman hastily tightened the reins and stopped the horse beside her. With kind eyes, the old woman leaned into her body slightly and asked in a low voice, "Where does the girl want to go?" The maidservant in Xingyi, who was given the surname Ma and the name Wenchun, asked in a trembling voice, "Old lady, do you dare to ask that this place is on the road to the underworld?" The old woman became more gentle when she heard the words and said with a smile, "The girl went back to her mother's house to visit her relatives, and she was separated from her relatives? Could it be that she was wet by the heavy rain and became dizzy, so she uttered such nonsense? Girl, the rain will stop, the road is rough and difficult to travel, the mountains and forests here have been plagued by tigers since ancient times, it is not suitable for a girl to travel alone, it is better to follow me to the humble house for a rest, and go early the next day, so you have to take it easy." Pretending to be a ghost. I want to see if you are a ghost, so you dare to play tricks here. The maidservant in Xingyi twitched the corners of her mouth, tapped her toes, and moved a stone on the road. The stone pierced through the air, whistling like a wind, and flew towards the heart of the old woman sitting on the horseback. In the mud, breathless, the maidservant in Xingyi lowered her head and looked intently. After some hesitation, she moved slowly, twisted her wrist, slipped out a dagger from her sleeve and held it in her palm. The weak old woman who was killed in a single blow suddenly opened her eyes, blood was flowing from her heart, but she got up slowly, wiped her dress, it became more and more dirty, sighed, had to give up, and said hoarsely, "Little girl, let me advise you with good intentions, why are you not afraid of killing innocent people by mistake? Even if you suspect that I belong to ghosts and gods, you should stay away from it." The old woman looked down at the empty wound, didn't care, just continued to babble about the old man. "Little girl, listen to a word of persuasion, the heart is fuqian, if a person's heart is broken, weeds will be broken 1 year's harvest, if there is no harvest for 1 year, you have to pay someone on credit, and you have to pay interest on the credit, so debts add to debts, hardships add to hardships, and the cycle repeats. When will it be the end?" The maidservant in Xingyi couldn't listen to these annoying nonsense, so she kicked the old lattice hole head away. The old woman's head was rolling in the mud, and she repeatedly murmured, "It's wrong again." The next moment, the maidservant in Xingyi found herself standing in the middle of the road again, and a horse was approaching slowly in the distance. The old woman stopped the horse again with a gentle face and asked in a low voice, "Where does the girl want to go?" Without waiting for the maidservant in Xingyi to reply, the old woman steered the steed and raised its hooves high, instantly trampled a hole in the latter's heart, causing the maidservant to fall to the ground in pain. The old woman still looked peaceful, then slowly got off the horse and waved the whip in her hand. With a crackling sound like thunder, the head of the maidservant in Xingyi was severely broken, thrown high, and fell heavily to the ground. The maidservant in Xingyi followed the tumbling head, her eyes switched indefinitely, either blue sky or yellow mud. The old woman had a gentle voice like her own elders and gently advised, "Girl, is it still wrong?" The next moment, the maidservant in Xingyi stood in the middle of the road again, horseshoes bursting from far to near. The old lady rode up again as if reining in a horse on a cliff. She stopped her horse and asked with a smile, "Ma Chuan and Ma Bai are half-brothers with a year difference in age. They are both in their early 20s. One is tall and thin, the other has a black face and short beard. They have very different appearances and figures. The two brothers are Mas Young, the leader of his generation, has fame and fame. Unlike Tan Hualang, who Ma Yinshan asked his younger sister to take the exam on his behalf, Ma Chuan is a serious scholar who was born as a student of the Imperial College. As for the younger brother Ma Bai, he is just dwarfed by comparison. If there is no comparison, he is regarded as a handsome man among the rich and powerful families of Yushuan Kingdom. The maid Qiuyun, who had an extremely ugly face before, found them. She didn't say the specific reason, but said that the patriarch had ordered them to come here immediately. Ma Chuan wanted to ask about the inside story, but Xiaoyun was different from her usual gentleness. She just bit her lip and didn't say a word. Along the way, Ma Chuan deliberately slowed down, walked behind his younger brother, and then went to hold her hand, but was gently pushed away by Xiaoyun, which surprised Ma Chuan. He is sharp-eyed and he is an old jianghu. Just by the way a woman walks, one can tell whether a woman is a virgin. Xiaoyun is also one of Ma Yumai's most important confidants. No matter how bold Ma Chuan is, he will not dare it ruin her future in martial arts. As a result, when the three of them entered the courtyard, they didn't see any of the elders of the Ma family, nor did they see any familiar worshippers. All he saw was the group of sword attendants in green with strange expressions, staring blankly at the few of them who arrived late. Ma's long house encountered an earth-shaking turmoil. The head of the house, Ma Yen, was kicked, and the housewife, Qin Zheng, even broke a wrist, but for the time being the adjacent mansions with two houses on both sides were not affected. It's just that the two of them have always been hiding their clumsiness, and when they left this wuxia street, they didn't show the mountains or the water. The last young man who came to the courtyard had a completely different demeanor and appearance from Ma Chuan and his brothers. His face was like a crown of jade, facing the wind like a jade tree, and the young man looked solemn. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "He is a master without joy or worry." It is indeed the place where the Ma family's cultural movement in Yongjia County is concentrated, and he is also a man appointed by fate in the Green Sarong. He has a bright future. It's just that the young man doesn't know the reason why he is full of blood and has a knife on his forehead. Qin Ping stood up, took the pamphlet and patted the long coat casually, walked down the steps, stepped out and came between Ma Chuan and Ma Bai. Wearing a green shirt and long coat, he was already standing behind the two brothers, reached out and grabbed the tops of their heads, and twisted them lightly. The two heads clicked almost simultaneously, and the two heads were turned directly from the front to face after walking behind. The two brothers who died in an instant just stared at the handsome young man at the gate of the courtyard. Ma Che. The handsome young man who was supposed to be calm and relaxed suddenly wet his crotch. A smell of urine began to waft from the gate of the courtyard. Ma Che only saw the blue-clothed swordsman who turned his head and looked at him with a smile, let go of his fingers, and the two dead men with broken necks drooped their heads limply. The man in the blue shirt turned his two heads around with a smile on his face, so that the backs of the two brothers' heads were facing the dumbfounded Ma Che at the gate of the courtyard again. "You are Ma Che, you are very courageous, you have to think about it later. Do you want to be an official in the Temple of Yuxuan Kingdom? National teacher, minister of the Ministry of Rights? Or do you want to be a son-in-law first? I heard that your son-in-law in Yuxuan Kingdom can be an official." His Majesty's favorite Princess Yuqing went to Jiqing the year before last. Watching the burning of incense coincided with an elegant gathering of celebrities. Ma Che, who was the youngest and most eloquent, fell in love at first sight, but it was a pity. Woman. After all, he was a young man who only read sage books, and Ma Che was already pale and sweating. Qin Ping smiled and said, "Do you know why Ma Chuan and Ma Bai ended up like this? Answer carefully, don't be like Ma Kushuan, that big fool who likes to pretend to be smart. If you answer wrong, I will slow down your head. Turn around slowly." Ma Chi's body trembled uncontrollably and the boy said with an unconcealable cry, "Because they often call friends and go to other countries to participate in a kind of hunting game, they like to pretend to be horse thieves and bandits, run amok and do evil, go to many times, many people were killed, the specific number, I don't know, I really don't know." Qin Pingan asked with a smile, "How do you, a scholar who doesn't hear anything outside the window, know about this kind of secret?" Ma Che didn't dare to hide. He poured beans into the bamboo tube and said, "Ma Bis' intentions are sinister, and he wanted to drag me into the water, but I refused." Qin Pingan said, "There is a lack of righteous speech, you have to change it to say, I just refused it." Marcher could only chatter his teeth and repeated obediently. The young man complained incessantly, "Why hasn't anyone rushed to this place to immediately take down this killing and bring him to justice? Hasn't our Ma family been in contact with each other in recent years, and has a relationship with the Taoist immortal master on the mountain?" Qin Pingan asked, "Have you ever killed anyone?" Marcher shook his head vigorously. Qin Pingan asked again, "Does the young man want to kill someone?" Marcher still shook his head. Qin Pingan asked with a smile, "Do the reading seeds dare to kill people?" Marcher still shook his head. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "As a sage and gentleman of Xuanhu Academy in the future, do you think Ma Chuan and Ma Bai should die?" Ma Che said without hesitation, They have done a lot of evil, they deserve to die. Is dead anyway. Unexpectedly at this moment, the necks of the two corpses creaked, and the two brothers seemed to have been cast a hold spell, so they could only stand where they were, but they turned to look at Mache with livid faces, their eyes full of hostility, as if to be willing to strip Mache raw. Mache, find a handy weapon, kill them, knock off their heads. You can use bricks, you can use the inkstone in the house, maybe it is better to use strings, it is relatively easy to cut off the skin on the neck, otherwise use bricks and some will be ground. It doesn't matter what method you use to get their heads off, Marcher, as long as you do this you can leave this place alive, but I will only give you an incense stick of time, don't wait until the time passes, when the time comes, it will become them to peel your skin. They are martial arts practitioners. Of course, if you don't think about the brotherhood of the same clan, they may be merciful and merciless. If feng shui takes turns, it will be your turn to take the upper hand again, so you can bet on it. Marcher froze on the spot. Qin Ping smiled and said, an inch of time is an inch of gold, you scholars must pay attention to it. Or are you willing to bet that Ma Chuan and Ma Bai are as timid as you, not daring to peel off a living person's skin? Ma Che didn't dare to look at those two pairs of bloodshot eyes full of resentment. The boy lowered his head and staggered towards the place where the patriarch was studying. He went up the steps and crossed the threshold. Soon after entering the house, his eyes wandered and Ma Chi's thoughts changed sharply. After a search, he quickly found a few weapons at hand, and wanted to use a heavy inkstone to break the necks and bones of the two brothers. A vase placed on the flower table was dropped, and the boy had to cut off the flesh of the neck with broken porcelain pieces to complete the agreement, beheaded them and cut off the first level. Ma Che held the inkstone in one hand and the fragment of the vase in the other, but when he ran down the steps, he saw those maidservants in green clothes with strange expressions on their faces. This made Marcher suddenly lose all energy, and stood at the bottom of the steps blankly, with cold hands and feet. The blue-clothed swordsman passed him by and said with a smile, I hate them as an eyesore and am afraid they will chew their tongues afterwards. It's easy to handle, why don't you kill them first? It doesn't count as an incense burner. Ma Che seems to be in a battle between heaven and man. A short maidservant holding a sword is as cold as ice. She takes a step forward and shakes a sword flower, as if reminding this young man who was said by Yushuang Guishilin to be a descendant of Wen Xing, you Marcher, try it. Ma Che was taken aback and he didn't dare to have the idea of killing people to silence him anymore. He ran straight to the two brothers Ma Chuan and Ma Bai, holding the priceless inkstone in his hand. The inkstone inscription engraved on it seemed to be shaking accordingly. The two fellow sufferers with bruised necks, unable to speak or move their limbs, could only stare at this helpless young man with murderous eyes. Ma Che burst into tears all at once and murmured, I can't do it, I can't do it. Don't force me again. Qin Pingan sat back on the steps, gripped the pine needle hand, lightly clenched his fist, beat his chest and said with a smile, brothers are killing each other, it's shocking, it's heartbreaking. Visions abounded, and the maid Qiu Yun stretched out her arms and grabbed at the study room, controlling a long sword nailed into the wall in her hand. She was as light as a dragonfly on water, and suddenly came behind Ma Che, stabbing straight out with the sword. Stabbed the young man to the core. Ma Che looked down blankly, half of the long sword protruding from his chest. The slightly curved tip of the sword did not have any trace of blood. The temple of the head of the maidservant Qiu Yun and Tsing Yi seemed to be hit, and her head swayed a bit. This woman, who seemed to die in love for the man she liked, fell dead on the spot. Before her delicate body fell to the ground, she took a deep look at her lover. Qin Ping swiped his fingers together, pierced through Ma Chi's long sword, turned back, and nailed it into the wall of the study again. The long golden spike of the sword fell meekly towards the ground. Ma Che seemed to be completely aroused by this sword. His anger and hatred were completely aroused. After he found that he had been hit by a sword but felt no pain, he didn't bother to investigate the reason. Dragging away from there, he threw Ma Chuan to the ground, looked at the latter's face with the lowly maidservant, raised high the heavy inkstone inscribed with ancient sages' words in his hand, and smashed it heavily on Ma Chuan's neck. Again and again, and soon smashed the latter's bones into pieces. The crazy young man looked grim, and began to grind away Ma Chuan's flesh and skin with the porcelain in his hand. In the past, sword immortals killed people, whether it was sword energy or pine needles used as pocket flying swords, it was too fast. The horrific scene in front of him is a veritable blunt knife cutting flesh. Ma Bai watched all this, his heart felt like a knife, and his liver and gallbladder were about to split. He has always felt that killing people is the most pleasant thing, and he is afraid of death and even more afraid of this way of death. Crazy like everyone else is crazy. The young man whose body was spattered with blood stood up and walked step by step towards Ma Bai, who was standing there with his arms waiting to die. In the courtyard, some blue-clothed maidservants almost vomited all the bitter bile water, raised their heads one after another, and looked tremblingly at the green-clothed sword fairy who had a focused but indifferent expression on the other side of the steps. At the roadside wine shop in Jiao Mountain, after Pei Qian sat down, he asked directly, "Why did you call me here this time?" "It's better to be busy with business first and then talk about the old days. Lu Xianying has always had the virtue of sitting without sitting." He stepped on the bench with one foot, shook the bowl and said with a smile, "It's Gu Kan's intention to call you over to help out. If it's just according to my idea, why is there such a need to mobilize the crowd? Otherwise it would be too embarrassing to the Ma family in Yongjia County, and they don't have an ascendant to sit in the house. Gu Kan is worried that your master is in the Ma's house and one of them can't stop him. The tragedies in the romance novels are full of people cutting grass and roots, not to mention people, even the chickens and ducks that lay eggs in the Ma family are slaughtered, maybe even the eggs of chickens and ducks that were picked up in the kitchen are smashed myself." Pei Qian couldn't help laughing. How could master do such a thing? But Lu Xianying and Gu Kan sitting here today still made Pei Qian feel at ease, so he toasted them with a bowl of wine. Gu Kan picked up the wine bowl, took a long gulp and said, "I never said that." Then Gu Kan added, "But I really think so." Lu Xianying said, "So Gu Kan is worried that the two of us will not be able to stop Qin Pingan. If you are present, maybe Qin Pingan will care about his status a little bit, and want to maintain master's face and be a good person on your side so as not to kill the red over there." Blind. Pei Qian hesitated for a moment and said honestly, "Then you have found the wrong person. I will not stop master from doing anything. I will only go to the chicken coop and duck pen to help pick up eggs, and see if there are any fish that slipped through the net." Lu Xianying choked for a moment, squinting at Gu Kan. "This is the helper you found?" Gu Kan was very happy. She did not misread Pei Qian. She liked her very much. Up and down the mountain, walking alone in the rivers and lakes, you can provoke me, but I don't care because Pei Qian is the master's disciple who came from Luoba Mountain. But if you dare to provoke my master, then Pei Qian is the master's first disciple. You can also try the boxing that was fed on the second floor of the bamboo building back then. Lu Xianying asked with a smile, "Little slug, do you know what your greatest strength is?" Gu Kan said, "My biggest advantage as a person is that I know that I have many shortcomings." Lu Xianying put the words on his lips and drank down his stomach with wine. Gu Lingyu, who was sitting by the brazier, couldn't help but chuckle. She had already taken off her boots and brocade socks, revealing a pair of slender feet like suet jade, with the insteps slightly raised like crescent moons. Listening to a few of them chatting is really interesting. Gu Kan held the bowl and took a sip of the mountain-mounted Pan-Temple fairy wine, as if he was too lazy to use the means of speaking from the heart, and said slowly, "I have seen Ma Xuanhuan with my own eyes, and everyone said that Ma Xuanhuan is domineering, and his words and deeds are ruthless. Don't worry about the consequences of everything you do. In fact, this guy is not as good as the outside world says. He only cultivates his strength but not his heart. Ma Xuanhuan can achieve today's outstanding achievements. He has his own genius and academic ability." Lu Xianying chuckled. "You little slug is the same as that Ma Xuanhuan, and you know each other best, so Gu Kan's point of view is still tenable when talking about this." Of course Gu Kan knew what Lu Xianying meant, so he just didn't take it seriously. Lu Xianying is not a person who can hide his words, and what he wants to say is on his face. In fact, Pei Qian was very curious about the way her master got along with Lu Zongzhu and Gu Kan when she was little heightened. Master and Gu Kan reunited after each walked out of Shujin Lake. The two sides really won't have any grievances, really won't drift away. Even if they meet, they will have nothing to talk about. If no master was present, would Lu Xianying and Gu Kan be the kind of close friends who share weal and woe? Would one be putting on airs and the other be a gourd? The last time I was at Jiwadu in Qingxing country, I was with my master and I had a chance encounter with Gu Kan, and the others went up to the building to drink. Seemed to be okay. This time I saw Lu Xianying drinking at the same table with Gu Kan. It seems to be okay? Because of Pei Qian's appearance, Song Wei, the goddess of the mountain goddess, was no longer suitable and did not dare to sit alone at a table and drink. Instead, she took the initiative to resume her status as the shopkeeper, and stood at the counter, waiting for the guests to refill their drinks. Song Wei is not stupid. The two men and one woman, since the person waiting here is the great master Pei Qian, and Pei Qian's attitude even a bit like a junior ceremony, then they must not be ordinary monks, especially when the young man in Confucian shirts, when he mentioned Ma Xuanhuan, his expression was as indifferent as if he casually mentioned a chi practitioner on the mountain. As a local mountain god, Song Wei often walked around the market. The young man in Confucian shirts spoke carefully while carefully observing the eyes and expressions of the tall man at the same table and the female cultivator by the brazier, trying to deduce more conclusions from the subtle changes, but the results made Song Wei even more frightened. With the name Xuanhuan there like drinking fresh water. Gukin continued, Ma Xuanhuan once deliberately provoked credit Yu, Chunqing and Su Bai, one of the 10 young people in the world, and 2 of them were among the 10 candidates. This is a kind of temptation by Ma Xuanhuan. Ma Xuanhuan wants to use this to determine Chen Pinggan's strength, where the upper limit and lower limit are roughly, and Ma Xuanhuan wants to figure it out, and finally come to a general conclusion that can make him feel confident. Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. You idiot from Xinghua Lane, why don't you just come to me, a fellow villager, to have a discussion? Gukin laughed and said, don't talk about the number of people in the world, you didn't even make the list of the top 10 young people in Aquarius Island, why are you looking for? Lu Xianying said angrily, if I am not just 41 years old and missed the age required by this list, otherwise I would not be there? Can't the surname be Lu at the top of the list? Gukin said, don't rush me if you have the ability. The person who made up this list is Tianhuan from Jiu Peak in Xinjiang. You can talk to her. Zhou Zi, who had ulterior motives at the beginning, selected several young people in the world and 10 candidates. Because there are 11 people in each of the 2 lists, there are a total of 22 people on the list. Ning Yao, Fei Ran and Chao Ci are all among the 10 young people. The last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi is the bottom one. At that time the list did not give Chen Pinggan's name, but only introduced the realm of the young hermit official, the sword cultivator of the nascent soul realm, and the warrior of the mountaintop realm. This made the young hidden official who was shrouded in clouds and mists a bit like a gatekeeper. It seemed that no matter who it was, as long as he beat Qin Shirshir, he would have the strength to be on the list. Among the 10 candidates are Ma Xuanhuan from Jinwu Mountain in Aquarius Continent, Su Bai from Shenzhou of Middle Earth, and Chunqing from Zhuhai Dongtian. Before Ma Xuanhuan went to trouble with Credit Moon, it was not really a fight because Credit Moon voluntarily conceded defeat, and Credit Moon is indeed not weak in terms of evasion methods. But Su Bai didn't have such good luck. Even though he didn't want to conflict with Ma Xuanhuan at all, Ma Xuanhuan didn't give Su Bai a chance to avoid his edge at all. Among the 3, only Chunqing seriously fought with Ma Xuanhuan, and at the same time Ma Xuanhuan was also the most concerned about this fight, just because as the only direct descendant of King Xinshan, Chunqing, the master of Taoism, rode, most like Chen Pinggan. After all, there are as many as 4 martial arts masters who have traveled to the Bamboo Sea and caves and taught boxing for Chunqing. In fact, from the beginning to the end of this match, he steadily suppressed Ma Xuanhuan, who was pure green, and in the end he gave this defeated opponent an evaluation that was not considered an evaluation. It roughly means, kindly advise, not to learn boxing after you become a pure youth, you are not worthy to lift the shoes of that surname Qin, it is better to concentrate on cultivating Taoism. Song Wei's head lowered again and again after hearing those words that were really just idle talk. Because she finally confirmed the amazing identities of those 2 men. The second suzerain of Longquan Jianzong, Sword Fairy Lu Xianying. Gu Qin in Nipping Lane of Lizhu Cave, the direct disciple of Zheng Juzhong in Baidi City. They are both from the same hometown as Ma Xuanhuan, who was born in Xinghua Lane. Yes. Only the proud sons of heaven like them can mention Ma Xuanhuan with such peace of mind. The kind of indifference that comes out from the bottom of your heart, there is no need to pretend to be loose. Lu Xianying asked casually, you once fought side by side with the 2 of them. In your opinion, what is the level of Chunqing and Su Bai? Gukin took a sip of his drink. Su Bai's shortcoming is that he fights people against each other and he is not cruel, so his realm should be treated at a lower level. His strong point is strategizing. Generals are what Su Bai is born to be good at. When it comes to the battlefield, on the other hand, when Su Bai dispatches soldiers and horses, he will become extremely hard-hearted. One-on-one, if Su Bai confronts me, he will definitely die. Chunqing's learning is mixed, and her talent is indeed good. Among the 10 young people and the 10 candidates, she is the youngest one. It is not without reason. Now Chunqing is only in her 20s. As a pure martial artist, after going through the wilderness battle, it is estimated that she will soon break through the bottleneck of the Yuanyu realm, boxing and martial arts. Proficient in 18 kinds of weapons as a Qi trainer, she has long been the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm, the 5 elements Kanyu, the thunder talisman, the organ formation, the shaman to descend the truth, And the ghost control, she is proficient in commanding the gods, hunting, hiding and escaping, and she has a lot of room for growth. Her advantage should be that after entering the ascension state, Chunqing will most likely become a strong ascension with both offensive and defensive skills. Higher than Yeshio Qingmi, similar to my sister-in-law Han Xiao after leaving the Baidi city. I guess the fire dragon real person in Beiju Luzhou will be the ultimate height of Chunqing's future road. If Chunqing with an extra layer of sword repair status, she can be regarded as Qin Pingan of the old porcelain mountain. Lu Xianying couldn't help laughing. If it wasn't for the last extremely hurtful comment, I would have really believed you, Gu Kan. The implication of the little slug is that Chunqing does look a lot like Qin Pingan, but after all, compared to the authentic work, she is just a poorly made imitation porcelain which is placed in the hometown of the few of them. It can only be smashed and thrown into the old porcelain mountain. When Qin Ping asked about the sword at Jinyang Mountain, Ma Kuxuan was actually watching from nearby. Yu Shiwu even said that this was Ma Kuxuan's only chance. Later, when the news of Qin Ping's engraving on the city wall reached Hauran, Ma Kuxuan was even more uncertain about the depth. Lu Xianying asked curiously, "Did you place chess pieces in Ma Mansion, Yongjia County?" "Idle is idle, you have to find something to do." Gu Kan nodded and said, "I was worried about scaring the snake, so I didn't dare to install too many nails. I only threw 3 nails into it and one was pulled out a few years ago. He is a rotten switching old man." Cultivator, he accidentally exposed the clues, so Shen Ke quickly destroyed the corpse and wiped out the traces by himself. As the reward agreed by both parties, his 2 direct disciples are now considered prosperous, and I will find them for each of them. I found a preacher, all of whom were anonymous worshippers of Baidi City, so I even doubted whether this person wanted to die on purpose, because according to the terms I made with him at the beginning, if he accidentally died in Ma's house, his 2 disciples will benefit the most. If I do a fair deal with anyone in the future, I have to make up for this loophole. There is another one that has been completely marginalized. Earlier, I worked as an errand in Ma Xinjiang. I was doing well, but I couldn't send any useful news. Now I am in charge of a small bank of Ma Xinzhuang Bank. The remaining one can also be neglected, and it survived only because she was not a chi practitioner. It has nothing to do with whether she is smart or not. Now she is just a concubine of a descendant of the Ma family. It is said to be a concubine, but she can't even get in through the side door of Ma's family, so she can only be kept outside, blowing pillows and talking nonsense, but in a few years she will grow old and lose favor. It's even more useless. When Gu Kan said this, he shook his head and said, "Even if the nails are hidden deep, they are still there. With the foundation of the Ma family's great business, stepping on these few nails thrown on the ground will not hurt your feet. After all, it's too stupid for me not to be watching in person." At the counter, Song Wei was terrified and his face turned pale. "You gods, you speak from your heart." Now she has to worry about whether she will also end up being destroyed. "Drinking wine from my shop, but you want to give me a bowl of rice with a severed head? You are too bullying." Consciously or not, Pei Qian glanced at the goddess of the mountain. The state of mind of the gods of the mountains and rivers in the world is actually quite boring and relatively the same. Most of them are shrines and statues of golden statues surrounded by incense. Degree. As for the town gods at all levels, probably because of the incompatibility of yin and yang and the different paths of darkness, even a county town with the lowest rank, even Pei Qian can't really see what's going on inside. Lu Xianying was disappointed when he heard Gu Kan's plan and complained, "That's it?" Gu Kan sneered, "Otherwise? How simple do you think it is to place chess pieces, train dead soldiers, and guard against spies becoming traitors?" Lu Xianying said unhappily, "I thought that the nail you threw in could have a chair in the Ma's ancestral hall." Gu Kan said, "Why don't you say that Ma Yan and Qin Zheng are the nails I planted beside Ma Kuxuan?" Lu Xianying's eyes lit up and he didn't feel pain in his back while sitting and talking. "Gu Kan, chatting with me, you've opened up your mind. I think this method is really good and feasible. You will work hard in this general direction in the future." Gu Kan spit directly towards Lu Xianying. Lu Xianying tilted his head to dodge. Instead of being angry, he quickly finished a bowl of wine, lifted the empty bowl, and continued to provoke Gu Kan. "Good hidden weapon, come again, see if I can." "It's a bit disgusting to fill up a big bowl, it's full, and then drink it up with your head up, Miss Gu?" Pei Qian grinned. Gu Lingyu, who was sitting alone by the brazier, suffocated, but still couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. "As long as my son has no objections, of course I don't mind." Gu Kan sarcastically said, "The gang of Mosh children are all sloppy wine bags and rice bags. They don't even have the qualifications to be pawns. They just focus on practicing swords, Mr. Lu. You can figure it out yourself and let none of me be in the vase. What about the people in the continent? Lu Xianying said straightforwardly, remind you to talk to me well, this kind of shady business, if I'm not in a good mood, I'll leak it to Qin Pingan. Gukin was afraid of Qin Pingan and Qin Pingan was afraid of himself. This is called tofu with brine, one thing for one thing. I, Uncle Lu, have no reason to compete with a little slug, it's 2 realms behind. Lu Xianying stood up and lazily said, I've finished the wine, it's time to get down to business. Gukin didn't get up and frowned, where are you going, what are you doing? Lu Xianying rolled his eyes and said, you talk the most nonsense, old habits, learn more from Qin Pingan, just follow Uncle Liu's to eat and drink. Gukin shook her head and said, if you don't speak clearly, I'll stay here anyway. Damn, I made a mistake, Qin Pingan didn't dare to say anything on your side, what should I do? Previously in Luapa Mountain I kindly wanted to go to Tongyi's house to help, and listen to what he said, so why not just teach me that I am too idle, a fairy? Lu Xianying's momentum changed completely and he said calmly, you 3 will go to the city god's temple in the capital, and I will go to the Xuanhuan kingdom palace. Pei Qian had already stood up, holding a green bamboo stick and asked, Sect Master Lu, I want to go to the Qin Tianjian alone. Lu Xianying thought for a while, nodded and said, of course, remember to change your appearance. If you really want to do it, don't hesitate. If anything happens, I will help you with your master. When Gukin stood up, Gu Lingyue, whose real name was Zi Wuming, immediately put on her socks and shoes and followed her to her feet. Lu Xianying glanced at the goddess of mountain god, smiled and said, how do you say it? Song Wei gritted his teeth, the wine shop is closed today and there are no customers. Lu Xianying asked, what if Changshan god asks you personally? Song Wei was silent. I really dare not make any guarantees. After all, she is a small mountain who depends on others, and Jiao Mountain is under the direct jurisdiction of Lujiao Mountain. Lu Xianying said with a smile, if this happens then you should tell the truth. Remember to send a message to Chang Fenghan at the end, who dares to wear small shoes for you in Lujiao Mountain. A line of peaks in Yangshan. Lu Xianying put on the hat and didn't hurry on his way. After a little thought he said slowly, slight changes, Gukin will go to the imperial palace, Pei Qian will go to the city god's temple in the capital, and Gu Lingyan will go to the Qin Tianjian. I will work harder and walk a long way. Gukin said, you are not suitable, let me replace you. Lu Xianying stretched out his hand to hold Gukan's head, looked ahead and said with a bright smile, there is no such reason, the 3 of us, you are the youngest. Gukin stretched out her hand to pat Lu Xianying's hand, but didn't say anything. She agreed to Lu Xianying's proposal. The wine flag was slanted, it was still raining heavily outside and the road was muddy. Lu Xianying said softly, Gukin, my friend has a lot of problems but I'm still a friend. But I have one thing with Qin Pingan, it's very different. I only persuade my friends once and forget it if I don't listen. Have you always wanted to ask me, what would I do if I went to Shujian Lake first? Tell you the truth, I will persuade you to stop. If you don't listen, I will leave Shujian Lake far away and wait the news that you were beaten to death, and then help you avenge, kill the person who beat you, that's all. Gukin smiled and said, it's already much better than a certain answer I imagined. Lu Xianying helped the bamboo hat and said with a smile, little slug, there is still a long way to go. No matter how high or low the 3 of us will be in the future, you will be the youngest after all. Whether you will win or lose, it is hard to say now. I just ask you to promise one thing. Don't provoke me, it's not how I will embarrass, I will not feel embarrassing at all, embarrassing it can only be Qin Pingan. Besides, if you don't deal with Qin Pingan, I will definitely help him. I have a conflict with Qin Pingan, you must help him, but the matter is simpler, can you understand? Gukin nodded and said, understand and accept. Lu Xianying put on his coir raincoat again, broke through the rain curtain and left in the form of a rainbow. Gu Lingyu asked curiously, where is he going? Gukin put on the bamboo hat, fastened the coir raincoat and remained silent. Pei Qian helped to give the answer, Jianghu Mountain Patriarch Hall. Gu Lingzhen sighed faintly, feeling complicated. In fact, she still couldn't understand Gukin, Qin Pingan and Lu Xianying. How could they become friends with such huge differences in personalities, and they could still be friends forever? No wonder Gukin said it was inappropriate. Lu Xianying is the current suzerain of Longquan Sword Sect no matter what, and Fengshua Temple, which is half of Longquan Sword Sect's natal family, and Jinwu Mountain are also the ancestral family of Beiping's military family. Gukin said, Pei Qian, you don't actually know the real Qin Pingan. I have been close to him and afraid of him since I was a child. So with Lu Xianying, it seems that I listened to him in everything. For some reason, Gu Lingyue just heard such a plain, commonplace sentence and she instantly shuddered. It is even far more uncomfortable than drinking at the same table with the young hermit, making the meridian dream of one of the wild 10-day dry monks more uncomfortable. Pei Qian hesitated to speak, but she still didn't ask in the end. No matter what kind of person Gu Kan and Lu Xianying saw as master, master is master. Will there be a reflection on Luoba Mountain? Gu Kan said this strange sentence first and then said with a bright smile, actually it's nothing, Qin Pingan is Qin Pingan. In a certain place in Ma Mansion, there is an old man who is old and late, sitting under the eaves of a shabby house. He is a good-for-nothing in his hometown. The old man leaned on crutches with both hands, and told the story of his hometown to a young man beside him. The old man said that he was a good hand at firing porcelain at the mouth of the Golden Goose Kiln where our family made a fortune. Chen's young master has learned a lot of real skills. The young man smiled and said that this is called masters as teachers. The old man nodded and said that was the reason. If he knew that he would not skip classes when he was a child, he should read more books in school. The old man turned his head slowly and looked at a young man who seemed to be hiding from the rain under the eaves of his house. Looking at the side face of the man, the old man opened his eyes as much as possible and murmured, "Young man, are you Qin Quan's son?" The young man wearing a golden crown and a green gauze robe turned his head and asked with a smile, "How did the old man tell?" The old man said with a smile, "They don't look like each other but they look very similar. My grandson often tells me the words in the book, yes, it's called demeanor." Qin Ping glanced at the young man, nodded and said, "Although the family of Jishan is poor, the descendants of the family must be late." The old man asked, "Why did you come to such a place?" Some things in those days, the more you think about it, the more sinister and penetrating it seems. At that time the old man was still young and his surname was Ma, so he didn't dare to say anything. These years, holding back in my heart, I can't say how uncomfortable it is, but it's just a little bit uncomfortable. Since there are gods flying in the clouds and fog in the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom, and there are several town gods' temples that are said to be in charge of people's death. A little worried, Qin Ping said with a smile, "The younger generation speaks directly, old man, don't be angry. After walking around, it seems that there are more than 100 mouths in the Ma family. There are 3 connected mansions. This is a clean place where you can stay without dirty shoes." The old man sighed, "This kind of conversation is not easy to pick up." The boy asked, "Are you a cultivator?" Qin Ping said, "You can say that." The boy wondered, "What are you doing here?" Qin Ping said with a smile, "The story is brought up again, come here to settle an old score." The boy wanted to ask more questions, but the old man coughed a few times, and the boy quickly patted his grandfather on the back lightly. Qin Ping asked with a smile, "Do you like watching movies or listening to books?" The boy in clean clothes nodded, "I like them all but not often. The stories of other people are like life. All the joys and sorrows are just paper articles. You don't have to take it too seriously, just read it." Qin Pingan stretched out his hand towards the boy's forehead, and the latter seemed to have opened his eyes, seeing landscape paintings one after another. Qiu Yun, a heroine who was born in the leader of Jianghu sect, left the school and traveled the rivers and lakes for several years with swords. On this night, she passed a dilapidated temple. She had experienced too many anecdotes of gods and monsters. On entering the ancestral temple where the incense has been neglected for many years, I saw an old covenant placed on the incense case. The women's oath was full of color, but the text content of the man's mountain oath was withered, which made Qiu Yun feel great hatred. She remembered the surnames and origins of the 2 parties who made oaths in the temple, turned around and left here, and first found the coffin of the poor woman who vomited blood and died. Qiu Yun immediately stood beside the coffin and promised to help her kill the man. Bring the heartless man's head here, and pay homage to her spirit in the sky. After that, Qiu Yun rode his horse and galloped all the way day and night, inquiring about the news, went straight to the capital, and found the mansion with a high gate decorated with lights and festoons. It turned out that the man who was named on the gold list had just married the daughter of the current university scholar, and there was a lot of traffic. On the street, the heroine Qiu Yun raised her sword and jumped on her horse. She went through several gates of the mansion and rushed forward. The sword cut off the head, and then picked up the red hijab of the wedding dress woman with the tip of the sword to cover the head. Qiu Yun turned over and got off the horse, wrapped it casually, clamped it under the armpit, got on the horse again and galloped away. After going out, she returned to the coffin, uncovered the red hijab, and threw the blood-dried head on the ground. The head of the dead bridegroom rolled over on the ground. When Xiaoyun recognized the man's face, she as if struck by lightning, she slapped the coffin board open with her palm and looked down. The woman's body lying inside turned out to be the worshipping woman who had glimpsed in the capital before. The next moment, when she managed to return to normal, she found herself kneeling in front of the hall. Through the gap of the red hijab, out of the corner of her eye, she could see the man she liked after finally getting married and about to enter the bridal chamber. She caught a son-in-law under the list, and they spent the past and the next month. Qingqingmi, he once said that in his hometown, there was a resentful woman who had been entangled with him for many years. It is good? She believed it and comforted her by saying that this kind of crazy girl is not upright and crooked, and has no family education at all. Malang, you don't need to pay attention to it at all. There was a loud exclamation from behind her, and she turned her head quickly, lifting the red hijab. I saw an unstoppable, ancient-looking hero riding his horse straight to this place. Immediately, the heroic man with a halberd beard and fist hair drew his knife and leaned over without saying a word, and cut off the head of the husband beside her. Turning the horse's head, riding one by one, coming and going in a hurry, saying aloud, has killed the thief. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.